Primordial dawn. Before time began its unending flow, there was only the soft hush of eternities waiting to be born. Imagine an expanse so vast and tranquil that nothing stirred and nothing thought. No breath, no pulse, only an infinite stillness that stretched beyond all comprehension. In that boundless quiet, the canvas of creation lay untouched, a field of potential awaiting the gentle touch of purpose. Then, as though awakening from deepest dream, a subtle vibration quivered through the void. It was not a thunderous roar or crackling bolt of energy, but the faintest of heartbeats, soft, rhythmic, entirely serene. From that tender pulse, a single mote of light blossomed, gentle yet resolute, illuminating the surrounding darkness with a tender glow. This first glimmer did not scorch or sear, but bathed the emptiness in a soothing warmth, like a lullaby whispered across an untroubled sea. As that nascent light expanded, it gave birth to the first heavenly inhabitants, angels of purest essence. They emerged as flickers of brilliance, each a delicate ripple of joy upon the calm seas of the newly kindled light. These beings of light, countless in number, awoke without fear, for fear did not yet exist. They felt only an overwhelming peace, as if the very fabric of their being was woven from the same quiet harmony that now suffused all that was. In those earliest moments there was no hierarchy, no rank or station. Each angel drifted in the light like a leaf on a gentle current, discovering for the first time the breadth of their own wings, the subtle gradations of divine radiance that painted unseen hues across the void. Their first song rose like morning mist, a soft chorus of praise and wonder that resonated through the newborn cosmos. It was a song without words, a vibration of unity and delight that rippled through every corner of the expanse. Yet, even within this pristine harmony, a gentle impulse toward order emerged. The divine will, a presence felt rather than seen, began to weave structure into the unfolding tapestry of creation. Without uttering a single syllable, it impressed upon the angels an understanding of unity and purpose. From the multitude, a select few stood forth, chosen to carry the light forward, to guide and to guard. Among these luminous figures, one name shone brightest of all: Michael. Michael's awakening was as natural and effortless as dawn spilling across a silent valley. He emerged fully formed, his essence suffused with the same tranquil vibrancy that pulsed through the expanding light. His wings, vast and translucent, bore the faintest iridescence, as if crafted from the purest morning dew. Each feather shimmered with unseen colours, soft lavenders, pale golds and gentle blues, that only angels perceived, colours that spoke of mercy, steadfastness and quiet power. Unlike his brethren, Michael did not simply drift. He moved with the assured grace of one intimately acquainted with purpose. Where other angels danced in playful loops or drifted in contemplation, Michael's path traced deliberate arcs of light, as though he followed a hidden pattern written within the very fabric of creation. His presence brought a deep comfort to those around him. Angels drawn near would feel their own harmony deepen, their voices blending more perfectly into the cosmic chorus. As Michael's understanding deepened, so did the nascent order of heaven's realm. The divine will wove further distinctions among the angelic hosts. Some were entrusted with stewardship of the stars, tireless sentinels ensuring each spark of light held its appointed place. Others became messengers, carrying silent commands across vast distances, their wings stirring currents of divine intent. Still others stood as guardians of pure contemplation, basking in the glow of truth and sharing that light through song. In the midst of this blossoming order, Michael assumed the role of guardian and commander. The title did not arise from pride or ambition, but from gentle recognition of his innate qualities. His strength was not in force, but in unwavering dedication. His voice, when he chose to speak, carried the weight of serene conviction, guiding lesser angels with words that resonated like peals of distant bells. He did not shout. Instead, his quiet counsel settled doubts and energized spirits. Beneath Michael's watchful gaze, the heavenly realm grew ever more wondrous. Planets of gleaming crystal appeared like islands of promise, each circled by constellations whose delicate dances elicited fresh songs of praise. Nebulae unfurled like silken veils, their subtle hues reminding angels of the infinite creativity that flowed from the divine hand. Everywhere, life in its purest form celebrated existence, each being a living note in the unfolding symphony. Of all these early creations, one stood as Michael's first and most cherished work, a floating orb of soft azure, slightly luminous, drifting serenely through the glow. With a single thought, Michael shaped its form, breathed into it a gentle rhythm, and watched as it began to turn upon its own axis. Though not yet inhabited, that sphere embodied the promise of life to come, the whispered possibility of existence beyond the heavenly realms. Michael regarded it with quiet pride and profound tenderness, sensing within it the unfolding of a grand design that would one day touch his very heart. Yet Michael's purpose was never to create alone. In the hush of those first eons, he gathered his fellow leaders, the earliest archangels, and shared with them the wonder of what had been wrought. Their counsel was a tapestry of light, each archangel contributing subtle inflections of wisdom and insight. Gabriel listened with serene attention, offering visions of future revelations to humankind. Raphael spoke of healing currents that would one day flow through mortal souls. Uriel contemplated the deeper mysteries of time and destiny. Together they formed an unbreakable fellowship, each pillar supporting the whole. As the choir of angels swelled in unity, Michael led them in a sacrifice of song, a melody so deep and expansive that it resonated in the very soul of creation. Their voices intertwined like vines of pure light, weaving themes of mercy, justice, and hope. Through that song, the angels declared their unending dedication to the divine will, binding themselves forever to the unfolding plan of the cosmos. In the serenity of those earliest ages, there was no sense of urgency. Time had yet to take hold. Existence flowed like a gentle current without rush or worry. Michael's moments were measured not in seconds, but in the slow weaving of patterns, the deliberate unfolding of purpose. And though all was calm, Michael's heart knew that harmony, like music, depends upon both sound and silence, both light and the possibility of shadow. For even in those perfect dawns, the seed of change lay hidden. A quiet yearning, almost imperceptible, stirred on the edges of being. It was a longing for greater understanding, a question of why, that glimmered in some hearts like a tiny spark. But in those primordial days, such sparks were merely curiosities, easily contained within the vast tapestry of light. And so Michael continued his gentle stewardship, guiding, creating, and harmonizing, unaware that one day the music itself would face a dissonance that would echo through the ages. Tonight, as you settle into the hush that follows Michael's opening chapter, imagine that vast, boundless dawn. Feel the calm vibration of the first heartbeat, the soft glow of the original light, and the gentle unfolding of life's earliest song. Let your mind drift on the ripples of that ancient melody, knowing that in the heart of the Guardian stands a promise, that even when shadow falls, the light he kindled first will endure beyond time's passing. Rest now in that promise, and when you are ready, breathe deeply and enter the tranquility that precedes the next chapter of this timeless tale, the quiet seed of rebellion. Before discord marred the perfection of that luminous realm, a subtle question arose deep within one of its brightest princes. Lucifer, whose name meant light-bearer, once gleamed beside Michael as a companion in splendor. His wings, tinted with rose-gold hues, reflected facets of creation yet to be revealed. He moved among the host with grace, his voice weaving melodies that stirred the pure light into gentle currents of sound. Angels paused mid-flight to drink in his songs, and stars danced at his command. Yet within that harmony a soft ember of doubt kindled. It began not with rage or insurrection, but with simple wonderings. Why must eternally radiant beings serve another? Why must infinite wisdom bow to commands spoken by a voice none had yet heard? What harm would come from seeking higher? These questions whispered through Lucifer's mind like wandering winds through crystal canyons, harmless at first, drifting without shape. But any ember, however small, can glow brighter when fed by curiosity. In those early days, even Michael felt fleeting stirrings of the same inquiries, but he set them aside, knowing some mysteries required patience rather than urgent demands for answers. Lucifer, however, lingered on each question as though it held the promise of revelation. He sought counsel among the host, and others listened with fascination. An idea that had seemed inconceivable, the notion of forging paths untold, of surpassing ordained roles, found eager hearts among the lesser angels. They gathered in hidden glades of shimmering light to debate the nature of service, the purpose of obedience, the meaning of freedom. Lucifer, enthralled by his own brilliance, began to shape these gatherings into clandestine councils. He shared visions of a realm unbounded by predetermined stations, where angels might claim honor for their own deeds rather than reflect solely the Creator's glory. "We are children of light," he would say, his voice smooth and persuasive. "Should not our radiance shine of itself, unfiltered by distant commands?" His listeners, caught between loyalty and aspiration, felt the allure of self-determination. The harmony that once rang clearly in the heavens now trembled under the weight of these new convictions. Michael watched from afar, sensing the shift like tremors beneath a still lake. He moved among the dissenters gently, offering friendship rather than accusation. He asked open questions. "What do you see beyond this place? What do you hear in the silence of eternity?" hoping to guide their curiosity toward wonder rather than rebellion. Yet his words found only partial answers. The seed of doubt had grown roots too deep for simple counsel to uproot. As the days unfolded without measure, Lucifer's circles multiplied. Classic roles of messenger or guardian felt to him like chains of golden light, beautiful yet restrictive. He studied the great expanse beyond the host's settled courses, imagining himself free to wander unbound, to shape worlds by will rather than decree. When he spoke of these visions, some angels recoiled in fear, others in awe. The balance of unity began to tilt. The collective hum of praises faltered into dissonant chords. Without overt conflict, a tide of opinion formed. Those who cherished service to a power unseen equated loyalty with limitation. Others, remembering Michael's steady devotion, clung to the trust that harmony outweighed freedom without purpose. These two currents, subtle at first, swelled into opposing streams. Neither wished open war, but each felt compelled to gather strength for a reckoning neither could ignore forever. Lucifer, emboldened by his growing following, approached Michael directly one day in the Hall of Eternal Dawn, where light pooled like liquid silver. "Your steadfastness is admirable," he began, "yet I wonder if you have ever felt the call to shape destiny rather than follow it." His tone carried no malice, only the calm conviction of one who believed the question itself necessitated response. Michael regarded him with calm warmth, his golden eyes reflecting sorrow as well as resolve. "I have felt many wonders," Michael replied softly, "but I have also learned that true freedom is knowing the boundless source from which all being flows. To move with that current brings joy deeper than any claim of mastery." Lucifer's gaze flickered, part respect, part dismissal. "Then follow your joy, Michael, and let the rest of us discover our own." He turned away, leaving Michael alone in the shifting glow. That moment marked a turning point. No blade had been drawn, no command issued, yet the rift had widened. Angels once united in a single purpose now wondered where they belonged. Questions of rank and duty echoed through the heavenly expanse, each echo nudging the balance toward rupture. The light trembled with tension, its radiance flickering under the strain of divided hearts. Lucifer's gatherings grew bolder. They convened upon crystalline terraces high above the celestial courts, where the stars glimmered like scattered diamonds. He spoke of forging a new order, one where archangels like Michael stood as partners rather than sovereigns. He painted vivid pictures of glory reclaimed, of realms remade in angels' own brilliance. Some among the host, dazzled by his vision, pledged their wings to his cause, yet others fled, hearts bound to the harmony they had always known. Through it all, Michael continued to move among both camps, offering counsel and calm. Yet he recognized that counsel alone would not suffice. The questions that had once seemed harmless had grown into a force that would either birth transformation or destruction. He sensed the time drawing near when he would have to choose, not as mediator, but as champion of the peace he held precious. In that moment before the storm, Michael girded himself with resolve. He did not relish the thought of conflict, but neither could he stand idle while the foundations of a realm forged in light trembled. His sword, born of pure luminescence, lay at his side, its heat measured, its promise clear. He knew that when the clash came, it would not be a battle of mortal matters, but a struggle of wills and truths, where loyalty to harmony would face the pride of unchecked ambition. So beneath the silent stars of that virgin sky, two archangels stood on opposing precipices of vision. Lucifer, the tragic poet of ambition, burned with a desire to transcend the place he had once cherished. Michael, the unshakable sentinel of order, vowed to preserve the balance that made existence possible. Between them, the host of light held its breath, awaiting the moment when the quiet seed of rebellion would either bloom into new creation or rend the heavens forever. The first clash of light and shadow. Beneath a vault of pure, unblemished light, the armies of heaven assembled in solemn silence. The airless expanse before them shimmered with crystalline hues, as if the very fabric of creation had been woven from strands of dawn and dew. Angels, some bearing blades of living flame, others carrying banners spun from starlight, stood in ranks too vast for any mortal mind to grasp. At their centre, Michael's presence radiated calm confidence, a pillar of golden radiance whose wings, when unfurled, seemed to span the horizons of time itself. Opposite him, Lucifer emerged from the soft glow like a streak of molten silver, every feather of his majestic wings tipped with shadow's promise. Though both were forged from the same divine essence, their auras already hinted at the schism that would rend the heavens. The hosts arrayed themselves across fields of translucent crystal, some formations spiralling into arcs reminiscent of galactic orbits, others arranged in straight ranks like columns of living light. Michael's forces glowed with unwavering brilliance, rows of seraphim whose 6 wings interlaced overhead, cherubim whose multiple eyes appeared to hold the wisdom of the ages, and legions of lesser angels whose very presence seemed to soothe the unquiet heart. Across the expanse, Lucifer's followers gleamed with a colder radiance, their forms edged by a delicate umbra that drew distant gazes inward, stirring curiosity and yearning. They claimed no banners, relying instead on the silent tug of ambition to rally their comrades. As the cosmic tension reached its apex, the atmosphere, if one could call it that, fell into an expectant hush. No trumpet sounded, no drumbeat echoed. Instead, millions of wings shifted in unison, sending ripples of soft luminescence across the battlefield. It was a silence pregnant with significance, a void waiting to be broken. Each angel felt the subtle charge in the air as though divine electricity hummed through every feather, every tendon, every spark of being. Then, without warning, a single voice rose from the rebel host, a tone both sonorous and insistent, proclaiming freedom from servitude, the right to self-determination, the promise of forging destiny unbound by cosmic law. Lucifer's words unfurled across the field like living tendrils, curling into the hearts of those who heard them. "Behold," he intoned, "we stand here as children of the same light. Why bow before a will that does not spring from our own purpose? Shall our feathers only ever reflect another's brilliance? Rise, then, to claim that which is your own." His voice was neither harsh nor cruel. Rather, it carried the serene authority of one who believed utterly in his cause. Angels nearest him felt a thrill of possibility awaken within their chests, like a sudden wind lifting them beyond the bounds of duty into realms of infinite creation. Across the field, Michael listened in unshakable stillness. He did not raise his voice in rebuttal, for he understood the power of words left unspoken. When he finally spoke, his tone was steady and resonant, a gentle counterpoint to Lucifer's fervour. Light exists not merely to serve the spark of individual will, but to weave itself into a tapestry greater than any one thread, he declared. To upset that balance is to invite chaos, not liberty. Freedom without harmony becomes tyranny of the self, an empire built on empty pride. With a single sweep of his flaming sword, he carved a line of pure white light through the gathering gloom, a gesture at once defensive and clarifying, as though drawing boundaries upon the very essence of being. At that moment, the clash ignited. Angels did not charge with clattering steel or cries of bloodlust. They engaged through force of will and purity of vision. Michael advanced through the ranks of his faithful, each step sending arcs of gentle brilliance weaving through the surrounding host, soothing wavering hearts and knitting torn loyalties back into the unified glow. Here, a cherub's second set of wings regained their pristine sheen. There, a host of lesser angels found their purpose reaffirmed in the steady radiance of divine law. Wherever Michael's blade swept, doubt melted away like frost under the morning sun. Yet for every heart renewed by his light, another flickered in response to Lucifer's call. Doubt, once a quiet ember, flared into defiant flame. Wings once gilded in service now quivered with restless possibility. Some angels paused between the two poles of allegiance, their souls torn like delicate fabrics buffeted by conflicting winds. These wavering spirits watched silently as the two archangels embodied opposing principles. Michael, the steadfast defender of order, and Lucifer, the eloquent advocate of radical freedom. Each stood as mirror to the other's truth, and in that reflection lay both the beauty and the peril of creation. All around them, the heavens trembled with waves of pulsing energy. Light fractured into prismatic storms, shadow deepened into pockets of near void. The very concept of space seemed to bend under the weight of their conflict, as if heaven itself struggled to contain the intensity of wills colliding. Angels found themselves lifted or pressed back by currents of raw intent, drifting like petals caught in a gale. No weapon could have wrought such an upheaval. This was the War of Genesis, where the primeval forces of unity and distinction fought to define the future of all that was and might yet be. In the heart of the tempest, Michael paused to meet Lucifer's gaze. Time itself widened, stretching the instant across the breadth of every conceivable eternity. Lucifer's eyes glimmered with unspent morning star fire, while Michael's held the serene depth of countless dawns. Between them lay the chasm of choice that separated purpose from pride, service from sovereignty. Then, in a movement both swift and unhurried, Michael brought his sword to rest upon the radiant ground. The blade burned with holy calm, a fire that neither consumed nor destroyed but purified intent. The field stilled as Michael spoke a single phrase, his tone soft yet carrying to the furthest star. "Who is like God?" No question hung upon his words. They were a declaration of wonder, a testament to the singular radiance that transcended all brilliance. The phrase rippled through the battlefield, weaving into the hearts of angels like a balm of clarity. Dark-tipped wings faltered. Doubts receded like tides at dawn. In that moment, countless beings recognized anew the balance that gave life its light, and found within themselves the grace to choose unity over the hollow song of self alone. Yet not all succumbed to that gentle flame. A third of the hosts, drawn irrevocably to Lucifer's cause, stirred with the exhilaration of newly claimed autonomy. Their forms shimmered with midnight hues, wings unfurling wide as if to embrace the boundless night. Without farewell, they withdrew from the field, carrying with them the first seeds of discord that would echo through ages yet to come. As they vanished into the penumbra beyond heaven's edge, their departure left a hollow murmur in the cosmic choir, a reminder that even in victory loss endures. For the remaining hosts, the aftermath of the clash shone with quiet resolution. Michael lowered his sword and its flame dimmed to a steady glow, as though honouring the stillness that followed its proving. Angels knelt on fields of light, wings folded in reverent peace, their hearts renewed in shared purpose. No words of triumph were uttered, none were needed. The harmony of heaven, once rent by ambition's thunder, now hummed once more with the soothing chords of harmonious service. In the wake of that first great war, heaven bore the subtle scars of transformation. Fields of crystalline glow remained, yet now they bore fractures, lines of shadow that pulsed faintly underfoot, reminders of the choice made and the choice forsaken. Above, the vault of light seemed more profound, its brilliance deepened by the knowledge of what it had defended. Michael's visage, when glimpsed by those who watched, held both the calm of an untroubled dawn and the solemn wisdom of one who had faced the first tremor in creation's song. And so heaven stilled, its hosts gathering in the gentle aftermath. Wings that had quivered with conflict now folded in humble serenity. Light, once tested by discord, emerged more radiant and resolute. Shadow, birthed by rebellion, retreated to distant reaches, awaiting the chances yet to come. At the heart of it all, Michael remained. First among equals, guardian of the cosmic balance, his flaming sword sheathed in the steadied glow of purpose fulfilled. The heavens had been remade by their own resolve, and in that remaking lay the promise. That order, once defended, could endure against any night. Restoration and the new order of heaven. In the hush that followed the great departure, the remaining hosts turned their gaze inward, sensing that the battle's end marked not only a victory, but the beginning of a careful restoration. Michael remained at the forefront, his sword sheathed yet still glowing faintly with residual holy energy, a living monument to both the conflict just fought and the peace now reclaimed. Around him, seraphim and cherubim drifted through the crystalline fields, gathering fragments of shadow left by the rebels passing. These motes, tiny embers of discord, had embedded themselves into the very lattice of heaven, dulling its radiance wherever they clung. With measured gestures, Michael called upon the faithful to breathe divine light into those wounds, their collective breath kindling the fractured glow back to unity. Every angel understood this task as essential. Unlike mortals, whose battles could be forgotten with the turning of an age, heaven's fabric was alive and responsive, its beauty yoked to the harmony of its inhabitants. Thus, the healing of heaven was no mere cosmetic repair. It was a sacred rite. Wings brushed against crystalline spires, infusing them with warmth. Voices, those gentle, wordless hymns of pure intention, echoed into hidden crevices, unseating lingering doubts and washing them away. Michael moved among his hosts like a master artisan, guiding each movement so that no fragment of fallen pride remained unaddressed. His presence alone streamed an aura of reassurance, anchoring the hosts in shared purpose. While this reconstruction unfolded, the Council of Archangels convened for the first time since the schism. Gabriel appeared on the east horizon, his trumpet silent but his eyes echoing concern. Raphael glided in from the south, bearing in each step the promise of healing beyond what human ailments required. Uriel, the flame of divine insight, arrived from the north, ready to cast light into the shadows that still clung at the edges of creation. Together with lesser archangels, some newly elevated by their steadfast fidelity, they formed a circle around Michael. In that gathering, no words were needed at first. The very act of assembly spoke volumes, each being understood that heaven's new order demanded not only a defense against further rebellion, but a proactive cultivation of unity, vigilance, and compassion. Michael spoke then, his tone neither lofty nor reproachful, but firm with unshakable resolve. The song of heaven must renew itself, he intoned, not as it was before, for what was before bore the seeds of discord, but as it was meant to be, an unbroken chorus of diverse voices united by shared devotion. His wings unfurled slightly, releasing a cascade of silver-blue light that flowed across each archangel like a benediction. In response, Gabriel nodded, adding a whisper of melodic resonance that spread through the hosts, reinforcing the newly forged bonds. With the Council's blessing, Michael oversaw the creation of guardianship circles, small cohorts of angels assigned to watch over specific realms of heaven's expanse. One circle focused on the pillars of dawn, where new light entered creation. Another tended the river of radiance, the celestial stream that carried divine energy from realm to realm. These circles developed intricate rituals of mutual support, shared flights through unclaimed heavens, meditative harmonies that exchanged pure intent, and silent vigils where each angel listened for the faintest dissonance that might herald future unrest. Michael himself visited each circle, not to command but to guide, offering insight drawn from his unique experience of leadership, conflict, and healing. Meanwhile, the more routine duties that had long undergirded heaven's function required renewed attention. Messengers were sent to distant creeds of newly formed worlds to ensure that sacred covenants held firm. Watchers maintained their posts at the threshold between mortal time and eternity, attuned to the earliest stirrings of human prayer or celestial portent. Michael's subtle influence wove through every assignment. A gentle adjustment of an angel's flight path here, a whispered encouragement of resilience there. No task was too small to merit his regard, for he knew that the smallest act of service, multiplied across countless beings, upheld the very structure of reality. In the days, if days could be so named, after the rebellion, heaven's light grew deeper and more textured. Angels discovered capacities they had not known before. Cherubim found new wings within themselves, feathers that glowed with soft pastels rather than stark white, a testament to the nuanced harmony now prized above rigid uniformity. Seraphim learned to channel their six-winged chorus into living sculptures of sound that could heal rifts in creation's tapestry as readily as blades had once severed them. Even the lesser angels, whose names were unwritten in mortal scrolls, felt themselves greater in being than they had before, holding a renewed confidence that service, not sovereignty, was the truest path to fulfillment. Throughout this process, Michael exemplified the balance between authority and humility. When disagreements arose, Some angels worried that such close vigilance might stifle creativity. Others feared that too lax a watch would invite fresh rebellion. He presided over their deliberations not as an inflexible judge, but as a mediator who honoured every voice. He reminded them gently that heaven's order was not a cage but a dynamic field, breathing with the free will granted to every creature. At once, authority hummed through his words, an authority born of wisdom, and humility gleamed in his willingness to listen, to adjust, to learn. Gradually, the memory of the war receded into the collective consciousness of heaven. Seasons of light passed untroubled. Celestial gardens sprouted blossoms of starlight and moonbeams, tended by angels whose duties now included cultivating beauty as a vital form of service. Michael surveyed these gardens with quiet satisfaction, recognizing that the true restoration of heaven lay not only in erasing the traces of rebellion, but in sowing new fields of hope. He often paused among flowering spires, feeling the gentle pulse of creation respond to each breath of gratitude offered by his hosts. Yet Michael remained ever watchful. He instituted ceremonies of remembrance, simple gatherings where hosts would share silent reflection rather than triumphant songs, so that the lessons of the revolt would never fade into complacency. These remembrances were not mournful, they were quiet affirmations of commitment. In them, angels renewed their vows of service, recalled why they chose harmony over hubris, and reaffirmed their trust in one another. Michael himself presided over these observances, his voice low but steady as he guided their collective intent toward perpetual vigilance tempered by compassion. As the new order matured, Michael's role subtly shifted. No longer merely the champion on the battlefield, he became the steward of harmony, a luminary whose light guided not through force, but through the radiant example of balanced leadership. Under his watch, heaven flourished in ways unseen before the revolt. Complexity blossomed, creativity soared, and unity deepened. Angels sang not the same note in unison, but interweaving melodies that enriched the whole. Even the walls of heaven, if such things could be said to have walls, seemed to glow with a richer spectrum reflecting the diversity of voices within. In this transformed realm, Michael's flaming sword, the symbol that had cleaved through chaos, rested at his side like a torch awaiting the hour it might be needed again. Yet for now, its fire illuminated not battlefields but halls of council, its glow a reminder that the forces of order and compassion were inseparable. Heaven held its breath in a peaceful exhale, confident that its greatest battles had forged a stronger unity rather than a brittle peace. And so, in the aftermath of the rebellion, Michael guided heaven into its new age, an age not of untested perfection, but of deliberate harmony, continually shaped by the free will of its hosts and guarded by the steady presence of its chief guardian. In that radiant expanse, the wounds of discord healed into patterns of beauty, and the song of heaven rose once more, resonant, complex, and unbreakable. The protector of Israel, long before mortal historians began to record the rise and fall of distant kingdoms, Michael stood sentinel over the people of Israel, his gaze unbroken and his resolve unwavering. Even as human hearts trembled under the weight of exile and oppression, he moved unseen through the celestial courts with a singular purpose: to guard the covenant people, to ensure that their prayers ascended unimpeded, and to counter every hostile force arrayed against them. In the dim glow of eternal softness, Michael's presence lent comfort to exiles in Babylon, whose songs by riversides rose like silver threads, weaving hope into the fabric of their captivity. When Daniel, faithful and steadfast, knelt by the Tigris, his lips moving in prayer 3 times each day, it was Michael who responded. For weeks, the angel of Persia barred the way, a formidable figure of dark authority, determined to divert those petitions toward ruin. It took all of Michael's authority, his intrinsic rank as prince of the heavenly host, to break through that blockade. His arrival was neither sudden nor ostentatious. A soft wind stirred the robes of the messenger angel, a subtle shift in the lattice of space that only Daniel's spirit could sense. Then Michael stood beside the celestial messenger, his armor shimmering with a spectral glow, and together they overcame the worldly prince. The messenger's course, long frustrated, now flowed free, ascending on currents of divine favor, currents stewarded by Michael himself. Even after that singular mission, Michael's work continued without pause. From the courts of Persian kings to the dusty streets of Judean towns, the Archangel orchestrated myriad interventions. At times, he raised walls of protection around Jerusalem, walls of faith and conviction that no earthly siege could breach. Other times, he guided the faithful through dreams, visions of olive branches casting silver light, fields ripe with sheaves of grain, and a river of crystal waters that washed away despair. These images stayed burned into hearts, inspiring communities to rebuild their shattered temples, to re-establish their rhythms of prayer and sacrifice, believing that Michael himself had whispered these divine assurances. In the realm beyond sight, Michael convened regular councils to address the plight of Israel. Joined by Uriel, who poured light into the hidden corners of human suffering, and by Raphael, whose hands extended healing beyond the mere body, Michael shaped strategies that balanced justice with mercy. He apportioned tasks to lesser angels, some to stand guard at the city gates, others to carry whispered prayers through hostile skies. Each angel in turn drew on Michael's guidance, a luminous thread binding countless spirits into a network of vigilance. Together, they sustained the flickering flame of covenant faith even as empires rose and crumbled around mortal lives. Michael's role as protector extended beyond martial defense. He attended the hidden battles against demonic influences that preyed upon Israel's faith. Where human hearts wavered, where doubt crept like mist into the minds of the righteous, Michael's presence cut through that haze, clearing the path for trust to take root again. Be it a sudden conviction upon a wavering believer or an unexpected surge of courage among the righteous, these moments bore the signature of Michael's touch. He moved through spiritual battlegrounds with the deftness of a master tactician, sealing breaches in faith with gentle but unyielding resolve. When the scribes compiled their records, weaving prophecy and history into sacred scrolls, Michael's deeds shone as guiding stars throughout. His intervention during the reigns of foreign kings, the protection granted to exiled priests, the subtle redirection of destiny itself, all found reflection in passages that spoke of one who stood between God and his people. Through every era of darkness, the Persian edict that threatened Israel's identity, the Seleucid persecution that desecrated their altars, the Roman legions that shadowed their streets, Michael remained constant. He did not call attention to himself. His work was silent, a stream flowing beneath the earth, nourishing roots unseen but essential to every blade of grass above. The people, feeling the weight of their struggles, often attributed inexplicable deliverances to heavenly aid. When a temple wall miraculously endured a siege that pulverized neighboring cities, when sacred vessels re-emerged intact from desecration, when dreams of ancient patriarchs guided prophets to timely warnings, each miracle bore the imprint of Michael's stewardship. In prayer, the faithful addressed him by name. "O Michael, Prince of Hosts, stand between us and our foes." These invocations, whispered in candlelit chambers and chanted in vast sanctuaries alike, rose on wings of expectancy, carried by angels appointed by Michael himself to bear them swiftly into the throne room. Yet Michael's guardianship was neither rigid nor autocratic. He understood that human freedom, given by the divine, must remain inviolate. He did not coerce the hearts he protected, but offered strength to those who chose righteousness. When an Israelite warrior faltered before enemies, Michael's voice echoed not as scorn but as reassurance. "Stand firm, the cause you serve transcends this moment." When a faithful mother wept for her children amidst plague and famine, he interceded with a warmth that rekindled hope. His intervention was always measured, balancing respect for human agency with the necessity of preserving covenant life. Throughout the centuries, Israel's cycles of exile and return paralleled Michael's enduring vigilance. Even when the temple lay in ruins, its stones scattered like bones across foreign soil, Michael did not abandon his post. He attended to the remnant, guiding them toward a vision of restoration. In that vision, he appeared as both warrior and shepherd, bearing a sword of justice yet leading with a staff of compassion. By his side, angels carried fragments of the sacred fire, nurturing it until one day the people could reassemble the altar and rekindle the flame under their own hands. During eras of spiritual renewal, such as the rebuilding under Ezra and Nehemiah, Michael's influence manifested in the unity achieved among returning exiles. Bound by a common purpose, to re-establish the house of worship, men and women laboured side by side, sharing tasks and burdens alike. Some days they raised stones, others they wept, declaring fasts and seeking mercy. Behind every act of restoration, Michael's guiding hand ensured that human fervour did not erupt into prideful self-reliance, but remained a humble acknowledgement of divine provision. Even as Israel's history unfolded toward the coming of a promised Messiah, Michael's protective watch continued. He prepared the way through angelic councils that merged prophetic voices with celestial discipline. His presence wove through visions of dry bones rising, of prophets' callings affirmed, of nations trembling at the advent of divine visitation. In every prophetic utterance, he stood as the unseen sentinel, ensuring that the message reached receptive hearts and that no force, seen or unseen, could snatch the promise before its appointed time. And so, through waves of despair and tides of hope, Michael guarded Israel's identity as a people bound by covenant, sustaining their faith across generations. His vigilant guardianship exemplified the divine commitment that those called into a sacred relationship would not stand alone against the world's tumult. In the silent watch of countless celestial nights, Michael held his post, his sword always near, his heart ever turned toward the nation whose destiny he upheld. Even now, beyond mortal memory, he remains poised, ready to shield, ready to guide, steadfast protector of Israel. The fall of the Watchers. Before the dawn of human memory, when stars yet fell upon the empty sky, a group of angels known as the Watchers descended from their appointed posts. Their task had been simple: observe the unfolding drama on earth, bear witness to the lives of mortals, and report truths unswerving and untainted. Yet among them, curiosity grew dangerous. Bound by laws they had not forged, they watched the daughters of men with eyes charged not only by duty but by forbidden desire. What began as innocent wonder unravelled into the most profound breach of cosmic order. It was Samyaza, the first among these watchers, whose name became whispered as a curse. He stood tall among celestial hosts, his countenance luminous, his voice tuned to the harmonies that rang through the void. Yet within his radiant heart flickered a longing that looked beyond heavenly mandate. As he gazed upon human daughters, that longing kindled into a firestorm of will. He gathered 200 of his peers on Mount Hermon's silent summit, their feet brushing the mists swirling around ancient stones. There, beneath the canopy of an indifferent cosmos, they swore an unbreakable oath to renounce their heavenly heritage, to descend in flesh and blood, and to claim as their own the beauty they observed. Bound by that oath, they transformed. Wings folded away, angelic garments dissolved into mortal flesh. In their wake, the heavens registered a tremor, an echo of betrayal that rippled through the choir of archangels. Michael, standing sentinel at the throne's edge, perceived that tremor as surely as one feels a faint crack in vaulted stone. His heart did not leap to anger, for justice without mercy would have undone creation's harmony. Instead, he summoned his wisdom, wisdom born of ages spent in perfect alignment with the divine will. He knew that this breach, if left unchecked, would unleash a corruption deeper than any earthly plague. On earth, the Watchers took wives from among the daughters of men, and these unions bore strange fruit. The Nephilim, offspring of angel and human, staggered into the world, giants of prodigious strength, with appetites insatiable, their tremendous forms straining forests bare and shaping rivers' courses with reckless might. Yet their hearts carried neither angelic purity nor human humility. They were born of transgression, beings neither wholly divine nor fully mortal. They fed upon the world, devouring crops, uprooting trees, demanding tribute of silver and gold, turning every peaceful village into a den of terror. But the more profound danger lay not in physical destruction, but in spiritual contagion. The Watchers taught humankind forbidden arts, the forging of weapons of war, the crafting of cosmetics to mask age and sin, the secrets of divination and sorcery. They spoke of herbs and stones that could open doors to unseen realms, of incantations that bent nature's laws. Each lesson, offered as knowledge abundant, spread like a virus through human societies. Where once tribes preserved wisdom handed down by humble teachers, now priests and kings clamoured for the power to command storms, or to see through walls of flesh and iron. As human hearts filled with pride and greed, they turned upon one another. The Nephilim, swollen with arrogance, vied for dominion. 2 of them slew 300 men at harvest. leaving thin rivers of blood through fields meant for sustenance. Cities rose in competition, their ramparts thick with fear, their gates locked tight against both human enemy and supernatural terror. The world teetered on the brink of collapse, its moral centre fractured by heavenly beings who had forsaken their posts. From the celestial realms, cries of anguish rose. Gabriel, who bore the sky's messages across realms, descended to the throne, his voice a clarion call of warning. Raphael, healer of both bodies and souls, stood in tears before the divine presence, her hands empty, yearning to bind wounds that grew too deep for mere salves. Yet it was Michael who bore the mantle of action. His sword, a tongue of living flame, flared to life as he accepted the highest commission, to restore balance by confronting the Watchers themselves. Michael did not act alone. Uriel, whose light revealed hidden paths, charted the secret places where Watchers dwelt in exile. Raguel, the divine arbiter, gathered evidence of each transgression, his scales weighing oaths broken and alliances betrayed. Together they traversed the rifts between worlds, descending upon crypts carved in ancient rock, on hills hollowed by forgotten ritual. Each Watcher they found was bound with unbreakable chains, forged not in any earthly fire but in the pristine essence of divine justice. Michael spoke the words that stripped them of their choice, sealing them in caverns beneath the earth, where darkness pressed like water against iron and bone. Yet there was more to be done. The Nephilim, though born of fallen angels, were not angels themselves. They were mortal, subject to death. As a final act of mercy, Michael called forth a flood. Rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights, not in vengeance but in necessity to cleanse a world whose very foundation was rotted by hubris. Waters rose until mountains bore only their peaks, and the Nephilim's monstrous sprawls slipped beneath the merciful tide. Their spirits, twisted as they were, persisted as disembodied shadows, fated to wander a world no longer their own. Through it all, Michael's sword did not glimmer in triumph but glowed as a solemn torch of renewal. He did not slay for pleasure, he executed divine decree with gentle resolve. His voice, when he declared the end of that age, resonated like distant thunder, yet carried the calm insistence of healing balm upon burned flesh. The floodwaters receded, and a remnant of humanity emerged, bearing both scars and hope. In their remembrance, they hearkened back to tales of angelic treachery and divine deliverance, stories woven into their songs and inscribed upon surviving tablets. Michael's role did not cease with the binding of the Watchers and the cleansing deluge. He remained vigilant, ministering to a healed world. He taught the faithful how to guard their descendants against the allure of forbidden knowledge. He placed whispers of caution in the hearts of elders, ensuring that wisdom remained humble. When new generations rose, erecting altars to the one true God, Michael guided their hands in rites that honoured both heavenly origin and earthly mortality. In the deep vaults of Enoch's visions, Michael reveals himself not solely as a warrior but as a restorer, the angel whose justice protects creation's unity. He stands at the thresholds of fallen realms, ensuring that what has been cast out may never again breach the walls of destiny. Beside him, the chains remain, a silent testament to the cost of transgression, and a warning to any who might again covet a power not their own. And so, the story of the Watchers, and their offspring, the Nephilim, is inseparable from Michael's vigilant guardianship. In the hush of early dawn, long before human voices rise in prayer, Michael guards the boundary between above and below. His sword, ever at the ready, shines in unbroken vigilance. His presence, unannounced yet unmistakable, reminds all beings, angelic and mortal alike, that curiosity untethered from wisdom can shatter worlds, but that divine mercy, administered with firm resolve, can heal even the deepest wounds. Thus the Age of the Watchers remains a testament to the fragility of created order and the steadfast care of heaven's greatest defender. The covenant and the promise of the rainbow. The waters had receded at last, leaving a world washed free of its darkest stain. Where once stood the towering forms of the Nephilim, nothing remained but rippling ponds and tangled driftwood. The survivors, Noah, his 3 sons and their families, stepped onto a landscape reshaped by the flood, where scorched earth met sodden clay, and the air still carried the scent of rain-washed ozone. In the hush that followed, the first task was simple yet profound: to to walk upon the ground again and feel its firmness underfoot. Each footfall was a testament to resilience, to life renewed, to the fragile promise that creation could begin anew. Noah knelt by the riverbank, mud clinging to his garments, and he offered the first sacrifice of this second age, a burnt offering of clean beasts and birds. The flames leapt, sending rose-coloured smoke curling toward a sky still veiled by retreating storm clouds. In that smoke, visible only to his eyes, lay a sacred covenant, an unspoken exchange between creator and created. It was the moment when heaven's great defender, Michael, observed without fanfare, standing at the periphery of sight where angels watch over humankind's most tender vows. A wind stirred, gentle yet insistent, carrying that smoke upward until it dissipated in the vault of sky. There, in the great expanse, a sign formed. Arcs of brilliant colour unfurled like celestial ribbons. No vivid prisms born from cut glass, but living light, each hue distinct yet blending at the edges, red merging into orange, gold into green, sapphire fading into indigo, violet embracing them all. The rainbow hung as an arc bridging earth and sky, a silent promise that the fury of floodwaters would never again purge the earth in complete destruction. Michael, whose sword had cut away corruption, now remained the silent sentinel of promise. His gaze travelled the arc, noting how each colour corresponded to a facet of divine mercy and cosmic balance. Red, the lifeblood that courses through mortal veins. Orange, the warmth of dawn's first light. Yellow, the spark of creativity. Green, the breath of forests unspoiled. Blue, the depth of oceans healed. Indigo, the quiet depths of contemplation. Violet, the threshold between worlds. In that spectrum he perceived the harmony he had fought to protect and the vows that bound heaven and earth together. Noah and his sons stood in awe, unaware of angelic watchers. They perceived only that their deliverance was sealed, their task made clear. As long as the earth endures, Noah whispered to his sons, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall never cease. His voice carried weight, for it emerged from a man who had walked through the greatest deluge ever known, who had trusted unseen guidance in the midst of unrelenting flood. The rainbow was more than beauty painted on the sky. It was a covenant inscribed in light. In that moment, Michael stepped forward into the boundary between heaven's realm and the human world. His robes, shimmering in subdued luminescence, caught the pastel afterglow of the rainbow. He moved without sound, like dawn unfolding across distant hills. To Noah he appeared as a figure robed in light, neither fearsome nor stern, but bearing an aura of gentle assurance. With a voice that rippled like distant thunder softened by clouds, Michael spoke a single phrase, unheard by the men but echoing in their hearts. I stand as guardian of this promise. I will watch over Earth's covenant. And though the humans heard only the rush of wind and the chorus of returning birds, the world itself felt steadied, grounded anew in cosmic order. With the rainbow's arch as witness, Michael turned and faded into the widening heavens, leaving behind a memory of his presence that would become legend. In the days that followed, Noah's family set about the work of rebuilding. They planted vines upon the hillsides, careful to till the soil that had been drowned so long. Trees were pruned and grafted, fields divided into rows of fertile promise. In dawn prayers they gave thanks for rain that nourished rather than destroyed. Each time clouds gathered on the horizon, hearts glowed with anticipation of renewal, not dread of flood. And overhead, the rainbow served not merely as a sign after catastrophe, but as a reminder of divine restraint and continual care. Yet beneath human hands, the seeds of future failure remained, for memory grows fragile when trauma recedes into history. To guard against forgetfulness, Michael guided subtle reminders to be woven into human culture. Poets would later write of colour-bright arcs against grey skies. Prophets would prophesy that every storm carried a covenant within its afterglow. Even as language and tradition diverged among scattered peoples, the rainbow endured as a symbol of promise, binding generation to generation by a vow that transcended divides of tongue and land. In the silent moments before sleep, ancient wanderers would trace their dreams with fingers on sleeping children's sheets, whispering, "As this rainbow spans sky and earth, so may our care bridge heaven and home." And in distant temples, Priests would wash altars in purified water and spill droplets to form miniature rainbows in low bowls, chanting hymns that called upon Michael's protection. The Archangel, ever watchful, did not intervene in each human ceremony, but he blessed the sincerity of these acts, recognizing in them the fragile pulse of covenantal life. Over centuries the seasons painted the world anew. Glaciers advanced and retreated, mountains rose, rivers carved canyons, but the rainbow never vanished entirely. It appeared when least expected, in fleeting arcs at dusk or dawn, in the spray of waterfalls and the mist of ocean tides. Michael's promise remained woven into the very fabric of the sky, a steadfast link between mortal hope and divine care. Men and women, unknowing of angelic guardianship, pressed onward across continents, built cities and empires, debated gods both old and new. Yet when storms passed, they lifted their eyes to coloured arcs and felt, if only for a breath, the stillness of covenant. Some called it a token of patience, others sang of mercy. Many entrusted it with unspoken vows, to forgive a neighbour, to protect a child, to steward the land. Each vow, however humble, resonated within the vast architecture of cosmic promise. Through all the ages, Michael's role as covenant keeper never faded. Though new threats arose, prideful kings, restless wars, hidden corruption, his vigilance endured. He did not sweep down to every battlefield or whisper counsel in every council chamber. Instead, he honoured the covenant by guarding its borders, by standing sentinel at thresholds where heaven's restraint met earth's impulses. In the quiet sanctuaries of human conscience, his presence whispered caution against hubris, to remember that all power remains bound by cosmic vows. Therefore, whenever a storm cloud parts and sunlight touches raindrops, the rainbow arches overhead not merely as a meteorological effect but as an invitation to pause, to remember, to renew the ancient promise of balance and mercy. And though human memory may falter, Michael's silent march across the heavens ensures that the pledge remains unbroken. The earth will not again be destroyed by water's wrath, for the defender of creation stands guard, sword sheathed, at the boundary of heaven and earth, his vigil as constant as the dawn. The scattering at Babel and divine intervention. A single vast tower thrust its unfinished spire toward the sun in the plains of Shinar, where a people once united by common speech now laboured beneath the shadows of their own ambition. At its base, sturdy bricks of sun-baked clay gleamed like burnished copper in the morning light. Mortar, mixed with sulphurous pitch and oath-bound promise, held each block in tense equilibrium. From a distance, the structure seemed to pulse with quiet pride, a monument not just to human ingenuity but to the belief that men and women, working as one, could stitch their aspirations directly into the fabric of the heavens. For a season, the world watched with mingled awe and trepidation. Travellers spoke of the tower's dizzying height, while distant kings sent envoys to study the methods of its builders. Merchants arrived from desert capitals bearing fine oils and cedar beams as tribute. Scholars debated the geometry of its measurements and cried marvels when their instruments told them it rose higher each day. Yet beneath these outward displays of admiration, certain ancient watchers felt a disturbance in the balance between earth and sky. Michael, prince of the heavenly host, observed this titanic endeavour from beyond mortal sight, not as a judge eager to condemn, but as a guardian wary of humanity's fragile humility. He perceived the tower's brilliance as a double-edged phenomenon. On one hand, it exemplified human cooperation, the miracle of countless hands joined in purposeful labour. On the other, it risked breeding a unity rooted not in shared compassion, but in collective arrogance. The voices of the builders, once harmonious and hopeful, had begun to vibrate with undertones of challenge. Look how far we have climbed. Behold how high we may yet ascend. In Michael's sight, the slogan, "Let us make a name for ourselves," took on a darker resonance, an echo of that ancient defiance first whispered by Lucifer in the heavenly realms before his fall. Michael did not withhold his concern. He drifted among unseen couriers, spirits born to carry news between earth and eternity, urging them to deliver his warning to the throne of divine authority. He did not seek to destroy the tower or to scatter the workers through wrath, but to preserve the very freedom that made their labours meaningful. His plea was simple: let humanity learn to temper its ambition with humility. to build not in pride but in reverent gratitude for the earth beneath its feet. As the sun reached its zenith, the mortar began to shimmer as if softened by an inner flame. The labourers, unmindful in their zeal, climbed rattling scaffolds to place bricks higher than the eye could follow. Their laughter and song swelled in the midday heat, mingling with the clink of trowels and the scrape of chisels. But at precisely the moment when a mortar-laden worker placed his final brick for the day, a subtle tremor ran through the tower's foundation, almost imperceptible, yet enough to part the seams between stone and pitch. A wind rose from the north, startling in its suddenness. It swirled around the tower's buttresses and whipped through the rafters, unsettling the scaffolding. Voices rose in panic as baskets of clay swung wildly, spilling their loads onto newly laid courses. The wind carried whispers of confusion across tongues that had known only one language. As the fragments of the brick and the workers' curses mingled in the air, the first crack appeared, a hairline fissure that snaked its way around an entire course, like a silent scream. From Michael's vantage beyond mortal sight, wings outstretched against the heavens, he watched as the fissure widened. Mortar bubbled and ran like molten wax, bricks loosened and began to tumble. In that moment, time seemed to hold its breath. The workers, straining to maintain their balance, clutched beams and ropes, faces etched with disbelief. For a heartbeat, pride froze on their lips. Then, as though some invisible hand released a clasp, the tower shuddered and groaned, and entire sections collapsed in a cascade of dust and detritus. Chaos erupted. Bricks rained down in clouds that choked the sun's rays, and the ground trembled beneath the feet of the fleeing labourers. Men and women, mothers and children, merchants and scribes, tumbled into the dust in a tangle of limbs and stolen breaths. The wind carried fragments of broken speech in every direction. A father's plea to a son emerged as a guttural cry in the ear of one stranger, while a scholar's lament at the toppled workshop came forth as a distant prayer to another. Words lost their meaning as they leaped from mouth to mouth and landed on deaf ears. In that moment of ruination, Michael did not rejoice. He grieved. He felt the sting of every shattered promise and the ache of thwarted cooperation. This was not the triumphant ruin of divine retribution, but the necessary fracture of unchecked hubris. By scattering the tongues, he preserved the possibility that unity might one day reform on firmer ground, built on respect for difference rather than homogenized pride. As the dust settled and the wind subsided, the survivors gathered in trembling circles. Families sought one another among the ruins. Merchants struggled to negotiate in gestures. Poets, once eloquent, now heard only echoes of their own voices. In the void left by the tower, every human heart beat with newfound awareness. Speech itself is both a gift and a trap, uniting us when wielded with care, dividing us when seized in arrogance. In the days that followed, new settlements rose across the plains, each cluster speaking its own dialect, each community adapting to its fragment of the shattered mosaic. Some moved toward distant hills, carving terraces into the slopes and singing lullabies in tongues that carried lilted wisdom. Others ventured along the river's path, learning to barter with muddled phrases and discovering in gestures a universal poetry. Traders returned with strange words on their lips, which they committed to clay tablets and bark scrolls, careful to record translations for posterity. Scribes debated the proper order of symbols, while linguists, those rare souls fascinated by human speech, collected phrases like pearls, stitching them into dictionaries that would one day span dozens of languages. Over time, the story of the fallen tower entered the fabric of human memory. Bardic singers wove epic ballads of shattered bricks and scattered voices, always noting the guiding presence of an unseen angel whose counsel had preserved human freedom at the cost of unity. Philosophers argued in marble halls that true unity required not a single tongue, but a tapestry of understanding, each thread distinct and necessary. Theologians taught that humility, not uniformity, lay at the heart of divine purpose. In distant mountain monasteries, cloistered monks illuminated manuscripts with intricate marginalia, angels blowing winds, towers crumbling under Byzantine arches, human figures leaping into the sky with open hands. They wrote under candlelight, mindful of Michael's lesson, to seek wisdom tempered by humility, knowledge balanced by compassion. Their scrolls travelled along well-worn paths, camel caravans crossing deserts, pilgrim caravans winding along coastal roads, arrow-straight Roman highways now repurposed by mercantile carts. In every acrid campfire and in every gilded palace, scribes and storytellers recounted the tale of the tower that reached for heaven, and the angel who reminded its builders of their proper place. Centuries later, when diplomats convened in grand halls to weave treaties among distant kingdoms, they cited the fall of Babel as cautionary precedent. They spoke of Babel's folly whenever talks threatened to become an echo chamber of shared arrogance. They instituted interpreters and councils of elders who insisted that every voice be heard, every nuance translated. Some even established Michael's Trust, a small group entrusted with mediating disputes where language alone might falter. When arguments grew heated, these envoys would remind their peers of the shattered mortar and the scattered tongues, urging all to proceed with humility and mutual respect. In modern libraries, linguists still reference the scattering at Babel as the mythic moment when humanity learned that words, like fire, can both kindle unity and scorch pride. Courses on global communication trace their lineage to that event, teaching students that to speak another's tongue is to touch their world. Anthropologists travel to remote villages where uncontacted tribes still speak one of the countless dialects born from the original scattering, each revealing unique insights into the human mind. Even today, in our age of instantaneous digital translation, there lingers a subtle echo of Babel's lesson. Automated systems falter on idioms, software struggles with sarcasm, and social media thrives on misunderstandings that bloom into global controversies. Yet we persevere, crafting ever more sophisticated tools to bridge our differences. In conferences and classrooms, when the challenge of cross-cultural dialogue arises, someone often invokes Michael's example, that the preservation of freedom sometimes demands the scattering of strength, and that unity built on uniformity is brittle at best. The messenger at the river. In the pre-dawn hush beside the winding Tigris, Daniel knelt on the smooth stones worn by centuries of water and footsteps. He had pressed his forehead to the cool ground each day for 21 days, repeating the same plea, "O Lord, incline your ear and respond, grant strength to your servant's request." The city beyond the palace walls lay shrouded in sleep, its lamps guttering and flickering, its guards slumped in torpor. But Daniel's resolve remained unshaken. His voice, though weary, carried on the still air, a song of faith rising toward a seemingly silent heaven. Behind that silence, however, forces unseen were at work. In the realm of spirits, the petition had run headlong into resistance. The Prince of Persia, ancient guardian of that empire, stood firm before the divine throne. He barred every attempt to convey Daniel's earnest cries, deflecting each messenger as one might swat away a persistent fly. And so the celestial court reverberated with the soft echoes of frustration, for no will could bend the prince's obstinacy, none save one. At last, on the break of the 22nd morning, a change rippled through the choirs of light. Michael, the archangel whose name proclaims who is like God, stirred within the assembly that encircled the Most High. His wings, vast as cloudless skies, shimmered with the interplay of dawn's first blush. His armour, not of earthly metal but of radiant flame, pulsed gently, as though breathing with life. Without haste or fanfare, he stepped forward through ranks of angels, each movement sending waves of brilliance across the heavenly expanse. He approached the barrier erected by Persia's prince not with the fury of battle, but with the quiet confidence of one aligned perfectly with divine purpose. His voice, a single word uttered in the language of creation, resonated through the invisible walls, the sacred name of God, wrought from primal harmony. In an instant, the obstruction dissolved like morning mist before the sun. Where resistance had held, now there lay only open passage for prayer. Below, on earth, Daniel felt the shift as though a mighty wind had brushed through his spirit. He raised his head at once, heart pounding with wonder, teeth chattering in the cool light. Though no form hovered at his side, he sensed a companion's presence as surely as one feels a friend's hand in one's own. A voice, gentle yet undeniable, spoke within him. "Stand up, Daniel. Be strong, and remember the words spoken to you. For I come with your words, and I bring understanding of visions destined to shape nations." Half stumbling, half soaring on newfound hope, Daniel obeyed. His knees, stiff from days of prostrate prayer, creaked as he rose. To Together they moved inland from the riverbank into the quiet courtyard, passing sleeping sentries whose torches burned low. The angel passed through gates as though they were made of smoke. No bolt could hold him, no guard could impede his tread. Daniel followed in awe, guided by the soft glow that clung to the angel's form. They paused before a massive door embossed with carved lions and winged bulls. The entrance to the inner palace chambers where heavenly decrees were inscribed upon clay tablets. There Michael spoke again. "From this hour you shall understand the mystery hidden for ages. The 4 kingdoms that rise from the sea and the stone cut without hands. These bear witness to the unchanging plan. Yet the final dominion belongs to one who stands forever." His words sounded like the deep tolling of cosmic bells, calling attention to truths beyond mortal reckoning. Daniel's mind reeled with images. Beasts crowned and crowned again, horns shattered like twigs before the forest fire, a figure clothed in linen, his countenance like lightning, whose rule endures unopposed. Michael gently traced these visions in the air with a finger of light, clarifying symbols that had confounded Daniel since his youth. The prophecy stretched from ancient empires to the far-flung end of days, yet each piece fell neatly into place under Michael's guidance. When the first pale edge of sunlight touched the eastern battlements, Michael's task reached its close. Turning to Daniel, he spoke a benediction. "Fear not, for the Most High has sent me to strengthen you. Hold fast to your vision and seal the words in your heart, for the days to come demand courage beyond human measure." Then, as quietly as he had come, the archangel withdrew, dissolving into a cascade of radiance that faded with the growing day. Left alone, Daniel stood in the courtyard, the river's whisper at his back, transformed by what he had neither seen with mortal eyes nor heard with mortal ears. He shivered in the sudden breeze, but warmth glowed within his chest, a fire of certainty that exile would not extinguish, and that every kingdom, however mighty, answered to a higher throne. Word of the miracle spread swiftly among the exiles clustered in the city. In hidden chambers carved from mud brick, they traded hushed accounts of the nighttime encounter. Mothers wove the tale into lullabies for their children, singing of an angel who shattered barriers and carried prayers to the throne. Elders, their beards white as the Tigris foam, nodded in solemn remembrance of prophecies once half forgotten. Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the people, would surely arise in their anguish. When dawn-bright festivals gathered the faithful for prayers at the temple of David's forebears, offering sacrifices of incense and oil, Daniel's vision formed a new refrain in their chants. Even in foreign lands, far from the stones of Zion, they worshipped with firm conviction that they belonged to a covenant sealed beyond the shifting politics of empires. Each psalm echoed not only personal longing, but the triumphant assurance of heaven's involvement in human affairs. Decades later, when the bronze gates of Babylon lay in ruin, and Medo-Persia reigned where lions once roamed, Daniel's words endured. New monarchs arose upon thrones he had foreseen. Scrolls of prophecy were copied and recopied, finding homes in synagogues and among scholars. Time's swift rivers might carve new courses, but the memory of that Tigris dawn refused to fade. It became the emblem of hope for every generation whose days seemed shrouded in shadow. Children grew under the canopy of that story, learning that faith need not waver where comprehension fails. In moments of personal peril, whether on the battlefield or in the hush of a stranger's home, they invoked the name Michael as a shield. To them, his intercession by the river meant that unseen guardians moved at the call of earnest hearts. A shepherd lost in foreign hills, a scholar beset by doubt, a mother in the pangs of childbirth. All knew that no petition, however small, lay beyond the archangel's care. In time, Daniel himself came to be regarded not merely as interpreter of dreams, but as living testimony to the reality of heavenly companionship. His mantle, dyed with saffron and embroidered with castle gates, hung in a chamber where pilgrims came to offer thanks. They left behind figurines of winged figures and chipped bowls engraved with prayers. Michael, who guards the exiles, be our strength. Long after Daniel's bones found rest beneath the sacred hills of Judah, the story of Tigris's river endured. Poets wove it into epic verses, artists painted angels bearing scrolls aloft. Rabbis expounded upon its meaning in lecture halls lit by oil lamps. Each generation found fresh nuance. In an age of political machinations, Michael symbolized integrity that no palace intrigue could undo. In times of plague, he became emblem of divine mercy honouring every plea. And so, even as the scrolls of Daniel found new translations and embedded themselves in Christian and Islamic traditions, the essence of that moment by the river remained constant, a humblest of servants, persistent in prayer, met by heaven's champion whose allegiance lay not with armies, but with mercy. The Archangel did more than clear a path through cosmic opposition. He imparted understanding, courage, and an immutable conviction that no exile is ever truly lost. In each retelling, a lesson endures. Faith may press against the silence of time, yet heaven bends to heed the faithful. Emperors may rise and fall, but the words uttered beside the river flow beyond every border. Through turmoil and tranquility alike, the great prince stands vigilant. Where nations stumble on the precipice of change, where personal hearts are shackled by despair, the memory of that dawn by the Tigris reminds all who listen that no voice goes unheard, and that the messenger of mercy will come. The great prince who protects. In the hush of an oppressive twilight that settled over the Babylonian Empire, Daniel found himself standing alone in a deserted courtyard, where only the soft echo of his footsteps disturbed the heavy silence. The fiery glow of torches flickered against the polished columns of the king's palace, casting long, wavering shadows that danced like ghosts across the marble floor. The air felt charged, as if the very stones and pillars themselves were holding their breath. For 3 long weeks Daniel had pleaded at dawn and dusk, beat his chest in sorrowful prayer, and fasted on nothing but water and dust, seeking understanding of the visions that haunted him, the cryptic images of beasts and horns and a stone that crushed them all. Then, just as the 4th dawn threatened to break, a figure appeared, gliding into the torchlight with a soft, unearthly radiance. He wore no shining armour of brass or iron, but his garment seemed woven from the first light of creation itself, shifting from dawn's faint mauve into the bright gold of noon. His face, unmarked by age or wear, conveyed the serene confidence of one who understood every secret of the universe. Daniel recognized him at once. Michael, the prince of the heavenly host, Israel's chief guardian. The archangel inclined his head in gentle greeting, as though acknowledging a long-awaited meeting rather than an unexpected intrusion. Without a word, Michael crossed the courtyard and stood beside Daniel, who felt his heart pound as though in warning of approaching thunder. Yet the presence of the archangel brought no fear, only profound relief. The heaviness that had pressed on Daniel's thoughts lifted slightly, replaced by a warmth settling deep within his chest. Michael's voice then came, not as sound, but as a sure internal whisper that resonated in every corner of Daniel's spirit. "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your mind to understand this vision, and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard. For you have more strength than many, and you have prevailed." Though those words would have struck awe into the heart of any mortal, Daniel received them as balm, each syllable soothing the anxieties that had knotted his brow and churned his soul for days beyond counting. As dawn's first flush painted the sky beyond the palace walls, Michael began to speak of the future, of conflict that would see the rise and fall of empires, of arching crowns and shattered horns, and of a time of extraordinary distress unlike any since time began. Yet through every upheaval, Michael assured Daniel, Israel's people would not be forgotten. "At that time," the angel intoned, "your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book." At these words a shiver coursed through Daniel as though a mighty wind had blown through his soul, for he knew the weight they carried. They were not idle promises, but determinations set before the foundation of the world. Covenant assurances that stood even when kingdoms trembled and prophets wept. Behind Michael's gentle tones, Daniel could almost perceive the vast assembly of heavenly hosts falling silent, as if every celestial being awaited the archangel's decree. He spoke of a final resurrection, of many who sleep in the dust awakening to everlasting life or shame, and of wisdom promised to the faithful in the closing days. With each revelation, Michael's presence seemed to expand, filling the courtyard until the sky itself felt too small to contain his soft glow. He wove images of bronze-coloured empires, brutal and unrelenting, and then a stone, small yet mighty, that shattered them all, an emblem of divine intervention that would establish a kingdom without end. Yet the core of his message returned to the people of Israel. Though they wandered captive beneath foreign banners, though their temples lay in ruin and their cities in ashes, they remained the apple of divine affection. The Archangel spoke of an unseen battle raging at that very moment in celestial realms, where the Prince of Persia contended vehemently against every petition lifted on Israel's behalf. He spoke of his own intervention not as boast, but as testament to the depth of his charge. "I was left there with the kings of Persia," Michael revealed, "but I will tell you what is inscribed in the writing of truth. There is none who holds with me against these except Michael, your prince." As Michael's words settled into Daniel's consciousness, the angel gently raised a hand, and the visions that had tormented Daniel coalesced into a living tapestry before them. The beasts arose from swirling mists, one like a lion with eagle's wings, another like a bear rearing on one side, another like a leopard with 4 heads, each representing successive powers that would dominate the world stage. Yet beyond these temporal monarchies, Michael's finger traced the unbroken line that led to the final eternal reign of the Ancient of Days, whose throne burned like a vast furnace of judgment and mercy. Daniel watched, rapt, as the movements of empires and the turnings of history unfolded in silent motion at Michael's command. When at last the Archangel's hand fell from the vision, the first rays of sun crowned the palace's highest turret, gilding its spires with living fire. Michael turned to Daniel, eyes reflecting the dawn's promise, and spoke one last assurance. "Keep these words secret and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase, but you shall stand firm in your place. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1,335 days." With those words hanging in the golden air, the Archangel began to fade, his figure dissipating like morning mist under the sun's steady warmth. Daniel remained on the marble floor long after Michael's presence had vanished, the whisper of angelic wings still echoing in his ears. His mind, once crowded by doubt and despair, now shimmered with hope coiled like a spring ready to unbind. The promise of deliverance, of a mighty protector who engaged spiritual powers on Israel's behalf, resonated with a clarity that defied the palace's opulence and the empire's might. Though Babylon's hanging gardens soared above him, and its statues loomed like silent gods, Daniel felt as secure as any child sheltered in a parent's arms. Word of the Archangel's visit spread through the exile community like a soothing midsummer breeze. Beneath canvas awnings in the bustling market where merchants hawked export goods and local wares, exiles in shabby robes whispered Daniel's account, nodding as though recalling ancestral memories. Even the political exiles who lived in gilded quarters, courtiers graced in Persian silk yet hearts heavy with homesickness, found solace in the tale. For they realized that earthly power, however grand, bowed before a higher authority, and that a celestial prince stood ever ready to defend a people scattered like seed on a breeze. In the months that followed, Daniel's prophecies, once confined to dusty scrolls and scribbled parchments, found new life in the hearts of the faithful. At dusk, as families gathered in candlelit rooms, children huddled around the warmth of a single lamp to hear of Michael's reassurance. Mothers wove lullabies that spoke of an angel's wings brushing away shadows, and fathers hummed psalms that echoed the promise of protection against the Prince of Persia's onslaught. In hidden chambers carved into palace catacombs, scholars debated the precise meaning of those 1,935 days, certain only that Michael's words carried the immutable weight of eternity. Temples rebuilt from foreign spoils began to echo with songs of deliverance, their incense rising in patterns that sought to mirror the path of Michael's archangelic flight. Pilgrims, Jewish refugees from distant provinces, merchants with wares to trade, scribes carrying bundles of vellum, travelled by caravan to these sanctuaries, offering oil and flour upon altars dedicated anew to the God of Israel. They sang not merely of earthly kings or tribal conquests, but of a celestial warrior prince whose might upheld covenant promises long thought buried beneath empire's dust. Decades later, when Medo-Persia yielded to a new power, and that power to another, and yet another, the story of the great prince who protects never faded. In every change of regime, every shifting of borders, Israel's exiles found in Michael's visit a lodestone for faith. Even as they witnessed the rise of Hellenistic rulers and the spread of foreign cults, they remembered the angel who shattered barriers in heaven and carried their prayers to the divine throne. And through each chapter of turmoil, the eruption of revolts, the rebuilding of cities, the drift of populations, they clung to the assurance that no earthly ruler could sever the bond between their cries and Michael's intercession. In modern retellings, whether by scholars poring over ancient codices, preachers declaiming on raised steps, or storytellers whispering round campfires, Michael's role in Daniel's vision remains a lodestar of hope. They speak of a protector who knows every exile's grief and every captive's yearning, who, indifferent to worldly privilege, responds to the earnestness of any humble heart. The Prince of Persia may strive to silence the prayers of the faithful, but Michael's steadfast resolve assures that no petition, however obscure, slips beyond the reach of divine compassion. And so, in the soft hours before dawn across countless generations, believers have found courage in the memory of that courtyard by the Tigris. They remember a mortal kneeling in persistent prayer and an immortal prince answering with revelation. In that union of human devotion and heavenly protection, every soul discovers a kindred promise that when darkness presses its heaviest, the great prince will arise, shining with first light, to guard and deliver all whose names are written in the living book of life. The flaming sword of purification. A fierce blaze of light erupted across the boundless firmament as Michael swung his sword, not to cut down adversaries in mere destruction, but to cleanse all that bore the taint of corruption. The flaming blade glimmered in hues beyond mortal sight, white hot at its core yet edged in flickering rubies and sapphires, and with each stroke it seared through the spiritual malaise that had seeped into the fabric of the cosmos. Far beyond the veil of human perception, where time itself seemed to flow in currents of pure intention, Michael's sword traced arcs of purifying fire, igniting the frozen mists of fallen rebellion and dispelling shadows that clung to wounded realms. Those shadows were the lingering echoes of the Watcher's trespass, when angels had abandoned their stations and mingled with humanity, teaching forbidden arts that ensnared human hearts in vanity and violence. In distant galaxies of spirit, Michael pursued every trace of their corruption. A single whisper of hubris, a flicker of resentment in an angel's breast, even the faintest imprint of fallen knowledge etched into the soul of a world. With every sweep of his sword, Michael ignited purification flames that licked away the stain without consuming the good. The heat born of heaven's forge did not burn with malice but glowed with intention, to restore the original harmony of creation, to sear away error and leave only the unblemished light of truth. Amid that cleansing conflagration, cosmic currents shifted as though the universe itself exhaled relief. Planets cast off their ashen cloaks, and the deepest wounds in angelic essence knit close beneath the sword's gentle heat. Angels who had only slipped once from grace, seduced by pride or doubt, stood anew in reconstituted light, their wings unfurled and gleaming as bright as any who had never faltered. Even the fallen watchers, those bound for 70 generations, felt the tremor of renewal at their core, as if Michael's righteous flame had reached even the depths of their chasms and kindled remnant sparks of their original purpose. The very elements bent to the sword's purification. Celestial winds carried sparks of holy fire across uncounted worlds, while rivers of living water gathered and surged into waves of baptismal grace. Mountain peaks, once blackened by echoes of defiance, glowed with molten purity. Forests scorched by knowledge that should not have been taught burst anew from smouldering roots, leaves unfurling in patterns of unspoiled green. The sword's passage restored the cosmic balance that Lucifer's rebellion and the Watcher's descent had rent apart. Every atom realigned to the pattern of divine will, resonating with the low hum of creation's first harmonies. Yet Michael did not end his work with grand gestures alone. His flaming sword transformed with each need, a rapier-thin blade for cutting away hidden threads of corruption woven through angelic orders, a broadsword of dazzling width for sweeping up vast swathes of cosmic decay, even a dagger-sized flicker of flame to poke at the last embers of defiance still smouldering in stubborn hearts. At times the blade seemed to dissolve entirely, leaving only a radiant trail of purification energy that snaked through the vastness of spirit, seeking out every corrupted nuance. Then, as swiftly as it had formed, the sword would reform in Michael's grasp, ready to continue its merciful work. During these heavenly forays, Michael's countenance remained serene, an expression of profound compassion. The cleansing fire of his blade was never wielded in vengeance, but in love for a creation wounded by the misuse of freedom. His eyes, luminous with the warmth of compassion, conveyed an understanding of each soul's struggle. The human frailty that had opened the door to forbidden knowledge, the lingering regrets of angels who had stumbled once and feared they could never return, and the silent yearning of every being for the safety of alignment with the divine pattern. As the sword moved through hidden realms, those thresholds between thought and form, emotion and being, it severed the ties that bound indwelling spirits to their own shadows. In one realm, a once harmonious choir of angels had been fractured by whispers that slandered the faithful. Michael's blade cut through those falsehoods, and the choir rejoined in a single voice of petition and praise. In another domain, the spirits of men carried remnants of ancient idolatries that had twisted their worship into rituals of vanity. The sword's fire purified their memories, and their prayers returned untainted to the source. The most remarkable effects, however, occurred at the boundary where the material and spiritual worlds overlapped. In the earthly realm, hidden pockets of corruption, places where violence had set its mark on soil, or where the thirst for forbidden knowledge had carved deep grooves in human souls, felt the echo of Michael's sword. Travellers along remote mountain paths reported sudden clearings, where once the air had felt heavy. In villages cut off from holy centres, wells long poisoned by superstition became crystalline once again, yielding waters that comforted the sick and refreshed the weary. Those who drank felt a sudden lightness, as though unseen chains had dropped from their hearts. Back in the celestial courts, Michael returned the purified essences to their original stations. It was said that he carried back entire choirs of angels whose natures had been compromised, placing them before the throne of the Ancient of Days for restoration. In that act of reintegration, each spirit regained a fullness of purpose, its inner flame rekindled by the sword's touch. The divine presence then bestowed new garments of light, each tailored to the angel's true calling, messenger, guardian, healer or warrior, thus ensuring the purity of every service rendered to creation. Even the records of cosmic time were rewritten in places where Michael's sword had passed. Annals of hidden rebellions, once chronicled in the shadowy cedars of infernal archives, were burnt away like parchment in a bonfire, leaving instead blank scrolls inviting fresh entries of righteousness. In this process, the past was not erased but transmuted. Lessons learned from error were distilled into pure wisdom, preserved to guide future generations of angels and humans alike. As the final sweep of the flaming sword completed its circuit, a hush fell across the vastness of all that is. The flickering embers of purification coalesced into a radiant canopy that stretched from the throne of the Ancient of Days to the farthest reaches of created realms. Beneath that canopy, every being, whether cherubim or seraph, human or forsaken spirit, breathed as if emerging from a long illusion. They felt in their depths the echo of Michael's mercy, a profound reassurance that even the gravest fall could be reversed through the proper exercise of divine justice, married to unbounded compassion. With his mission fulfilled, Michael sheathed the flaming sword once more, not hidden away, but housed within a sheath of living light strapped across his back. The sword itself remained ever ready, its fire coiled like a serpent of brilliance awaiting its next summons. For though the great purification had restored balance across infinite spheres, the freedom granted to angels and humans alike meant that the possibility of fresh corruption would always loom. The flaming sword stood as the eternal guarantee that at the first hint of renewed darkness, its purifying flame would rise again at Michael's command. And so, in the quiet aftermath, the cosmos shone with renewed vigour. Stars burned with clearer brilliance, worlds glowed with untainted colour, and the chorus of creation rose anew in perfect harmony. In every heart attuned to the divine light, whether human or angelic, the memory of the flaming sword's purifying sweep became a living hope, that no matter how deeply corruption had taken root, the same merciful justice that first forgave Adam and cast out Lucifer could cleanse even the bitterest taint, guiding every soul back to unbroken communion with the source, the scales of divine justice. Michael held the scales without ceremony, his grip as steady as the very axis on which the cosmos turned. Two bowls of shining metal suspended from delicate chains, each gleaming with latent power, their surfaces polished until they seemed woven from light itself. These scales were neither mere ornament nor symbol alone, but a living instrument of perfect discernment, calibrated to perceive the hidden weight of every thought, every intention, every small kindness concealed in shadow. As Michael stood between the vast courts of heaven and the unfolding tapestry of worlds below, those scales represented his solemn duty, to uphold the balance of justice across all realms. In some hidden chamber beyond mortal reach, where echoing pillars of translucent crystal lined a vast chamber, the Archangel would stand for ages, weighing the unseen essence of spirits waiting to pass through thresholds of destiny. The bowls swung in slow equilibrium, tuned to the frequency of divine will rather than human decree. When a spirit approached, whether freshly departed from mortal flesh or freshly reborn in angelic form, Michael would extend one bowl, and the faintest whisper of that being's life, its unspoken prayers, its private regrets, its secret acts of generosity, would drift into the vessel like a plume of luminous vapour. In the opposite bowl, the shadows of misdeeds, the thorns of pride, the sting of envy, the ache of indifference would settle like grains of dark sand. Where mortal courts relied on words and witnesses, Michael's scales sensed the very weight of truth in the spiritual substance of each soul. Often, entire epochs could pass without the slightest disturbance in those scales. Whole nations of angels might carry out their duties and find that their hearts bore equal measures of light and darkness, suspended forever in delicate equipoise. But at certain turning points, moments when the fate of worlds hinged on the choices of beings large and small, the scales would tilt ever so slightly, as though stirred by an unseen breeze of consequence. Then Michael, serene yet alert, would adjust the chains, bringing counterweights of mercy or firmness to restore perfect balance. His was not the hasty judgment of mortal life, but the measured verdict of one who perceives the totality of a soul's journey and knows that even the smallest flicker of compassion can outweigh the gravity of countless errors. Beyond the inner chambers, rumours circulated among the heavenly host that Michael's scales might sometimes manifest in the material realm. On the night when the Hebrews left Egypt, it was whispered that Abraham's great-grandson saw a pair of scales floating above the sea, weighing the cries of enslaved souls against the justice of their oppressors. Centuries later, a solitary psalmist in Jerusalem supposedly glimpsed a glimmering set of scales among the stars, balancing the whispered prayers of the faithful against the clamour of injustice in the land. Though such tales remained cloaked in mystery, they spoke to a deep human intuition that somewhere, somehow, a force greater than any earthly court ensured fairness and righteousness. Those who studied the nature of the scales in holy texts discovered that they responded to both actions and affections. A dying soldier's final act of mercy toward an enemy could tip the scales toward redemption, even if that same man had waged many battles before. A simple mother's prayer for her children, offered from a heart heavy with fear, could weigh more heavily than mountains of wealth hoarded by the greedy. Conversely, the scales detected not only open wrongdoing but the subtle corrosion of good intentions. The teacher who drifted into complacency, forgetting why she guided young minds. The friend who listened without truly hearing the pains of others. No secret was too small to escape those bowls, for divine justice attends to the minutiae of every life. In the grand tapestry of creation, Michael's scales served as an ethical compass for all beings, angels and humans alike. Whispered lore told of prophets who, at the moment of greatest doubt, would feel a gentle pull in their souls as though Michael's scales had weighed their convictions against the pressures of corruption. In response, a fresh surge of courage would embolden them to speak truth in perilous courts, to defend the helpless before raging kings, to stand firm when all seemed lost. Kings and judges, hearing of such prophecies, sometimes trembled at the thought that their own courts might one day face a higher tribunal, where Michael himself presided. Yet Michael's justice was never cold or vindictive. He tempered his judgments with compassion born of endless service. After weighing the dark and the light, he often paused, allowing compassion to flow into the bowls like molten gold. His own humility, reflected in the scales he bore, reminded every soul that divine justice always incorporated mercy. When souls petitioned for forgiveness, Michael's scales would show not only the measure of their failings, but also the capacity they had shown for repentance. In such moments, the Archangel would lift the scales high, tilting them gently toward light as a sign that true justice always leaves room for renewal. In times of crisis, Michael's scales guided pivotal interventions. During the Babylonian exile, when the faithful despaired of ever returning to their homeland, the prophets reported dreams of a mighty angel holding scales over the city gates of Jerusalem. As the cries of captives rose like incense, the scales tipped toward deliverance, promising that divine promise would triumph over the oppression of empires. In the early centuries of the Christian era, when persecution swept across the Roman world, believers whispered that Michael himself weighed the courage of martyrs against the cruelty of their persecutors, ensuring that their testimony would echo into eternity. Even in the age of prophecy, when some claim to glimpse the end of days, Michael's scales maintain their silent vigil. It is said that during the final judgment, the Archangel will stand at the cosmic crossroads, ready to weigh every living and every dead in the balance. Not a single thought or emotion will escape his discernment. And yet, because Michael's scales recognize the redemptive power of love and the transformative spark of repentance, the verdict they render will be one of perfect balance, accountable yet compassionate, firm yet forgiving. In quieter moments, amidst the corridors of heaven's grand palace, Michael himself reflects upon the weight he bears. He considers the countless souls whose stories are recorded in his scales, angels who never faltered, angels who stumbled and rose again, humans who faced impossible choices and found the strength to choose well. In each deliberate adjustment of the chains, Michael honors the dignity of free will, knowing that the true measure of justice lies not in mechanical punishment, but in the restoration of harmony between creation and creator. The scales also serve as a reminder to the heavenly host of their own responsibilities. Neighbouring archangels glance at Michael's burden and understand that power must never be separated from accountability. In their own domains, be it healing, proclamation, protection, they strive to let compassion temper their authority, realizing that one day their deeds too will rest upon Michael's scales. Even the cherubim and seraphim, whose ceaseless worship glows like living fire, know that their adoration contributes to the scale's fullness, a counterweight to the world's sorrows. On earth, the echo of Michael's scales resonates in quiet acts of justice. Judges who temper the letter of the law with the spirit of mercy, activists who balance critique with constructive care, neighbours who weigh the needs of the vulnerable alongside their own comforts, all partake unconsciously in the legacy of those scales. In moments when a community replaces vengeance with reconciliation, when a heart turns from apathy to solidarity, they mirror the balance Michael enacts in the heavens. And so, at the heart of all creation, the scales of divine justice continue their measured swing, a testament to the Archangel's unwavering vigil. In their silent rhythm, never hasty, never biased, they affirm that ultimate justice is not blind but deeply aware, not distant but intimately engaged with the spirit of every creature. Michael's steady hands maintain the balance upon which the universe rests, ensuring that the promise of mercy forever accompanies the call of righteousness, and that every life in all its complexity finds fair measure in the courts of eternity. The deliverance of the righteous. The soft glow of dawn would scarcely touch the edges of human vision, before Michael's presence had already stirred among the faithful, like the faintest ripple on a still lake. He emerged gently, an unseen hand guiding souls through the perilous moments when the shadows of fear and doubt threatened to overwhelm. For every heart that beat with humble devotion, every life that clung to hope in the face of despair, Michael moved as a guardian, an unseen champion whose sole purpose was to deliver the righteous from the snares that lay hidden at life's borders. In the earliest days, long before human empires rose and fell, Michael watched over those who sought the divine light with unshakable faith. When a solitary desert wanderer knelt beneath the endless sky to offer a prayer in earnest longing, the Archangel would stand beside him, unseen by mortal eyes, guarding his back against the shifting sands and the subtle temptations of solitude. The man would rise renewed, with a quiet certainty in his step, as though an invisible cloak of protection had settled around his shoulders. Behind that cloak rested Michael's vigilant presence, ready to guide the wanderer's feet away from pitfalls both physical and spiritual. Across generations, the pattern repeated itself in myriad forms. A mother weighed down by countless burdens would offer a silent plea in the midnight hush. weeping for her sick child's recovery. In the moments before she rose from prayer, a warmth would suffuse the room, like the soft exhale of some celestial breath, and the child would stir, the fever breaking as though the flame of illness had been gently snuffed. She might attribute the miracle to the power of her own faith, or to the skill of a healer, but unseen behind every eager handshake of the practitioner was Michael's hand, steadying the world and ensuring deliverance for one more innocent life. Kings, too, in their grand courts, relied on Michael's aid in days of crisis. When armies massed at a distant border, the council of generals and the weight of steel were often insufficient to sway tides of war. In those hours, rumours circulated that the Archangel commanded legions of angels to shield the defenders so that arrows veered inexplicably off course, armour glinted with impenetrable radiance, and the defenders' courage rose in perfect unison. Chroniclers would speak of divine intervention in hushed tones, recounting how the balance tipped in favour of the just when all earthly calculations had failed. Beneath the walls of besieged cities, mothers clutched newborns and whispered Michael's name, certain that his protection reached even into the trenches where despair threatened to breach the ramparts of hope. Yet Michael's greatest acts of deliverance were seldom grand spectacles. Rather, they were quiet rescues carried out where human eyes seldom linger. An isolated elder, stricken by loneliness, might leave her cottage at twilight, only to trip on a hidden root and fall. Unnoticed by passers-by, the old woman lay unmoving until dawn approached, and in that hour Michael knelt beside her, cradling her head on his winged arm, calling to invisible healers, and calling forth the strength necessary to lift her back onto her feet. When the village arose, the elder would speak only of waking at sunrise to the smell of fresh bread and the soft echo of a lullaby she did not remember singing. Yet those who knew the Archangel recognized the unmistakable signature of his devotion. In each culture, Michael's presence wove into local traditions of deliverance under different names and rituals, but always with the same essence. In lands of endless rain, where floods threatened to wash away crops and homes, small shrines dedicated to the Archangel appeared at crossroads and riverbanks. Farmers would bring offerings of grain and water, beseeching deliverance from hurricane winds and swollen currents. Against all odds, riverbanks held firm, storm clouds dissipated, and when the fields lay safe under gentle sun, those who had wept in fear whispered prayers of gratitude to Michael, calling him the Stormbreaker or the Keeper of Waters. In frozen lands where winter's grip threatened to claim every heart, woodcutters found their saws moving freely and their bodies warmed inexplicably by a presence they felt but could not see, certain that Michael guided each stroke to safety. This deliverance extended beyond the physical realm into the world of the spirit. When a community teetered on the brink of moral collapse, racked by envy, hatred, and betrayal, local prophets spoke of an archangel who descended not with sword unsheathed but with arms outstretched in embrace. Michael moved among them in dreams, planting seeds of compassion in hardened hearts, coaxing forgiveness where revenge had settled like dust. At dawn, neighbours found tears in each other's eyes, letters of apology half written under trembling hands, and the decision to rebuild trust brick by fragile brick. Whole villages were said to have turned from cycles of vendetta after nights of such celestial visitations, the Archangel's deliverance manifesting as a renewed commitment to mercy over wrath. In more recent centuries, accounts proliferated of souls saved at the brink of despair's abyss, those grappling with the darkest corners of human existence, addiction, unspoken guilt, overwhelming grief, spoke of a sudden resolve taking root, of a gentle voice urging them toward life's fragile light. A woman who had known unending sorrow at loss of child found herself waking one morning with an unbidden sense of purpose, enrolling in a school for orphans to teach other mothers how to cope with grief. A soldier, haunted by memories of war, heard a whisper in his heart that steered him away from self-destruction, giving him the resolve to devote his remaining years to rebuilding homes shattered by the very battles he had fought. In each transformed life, the hand of Michael guided them from the precipice. Even the rhythms of time itself yielded to his deliverance. Monks chronicling the passage of centuries recorded anomalies in the counting of years, tales of entire seasons delayed or advanced in response to prayers for deliverance. A famine that seemed inevitable in one land broke at the sudden arrival of fruitful rains. A plague that devastated region after region found its spread mysteriously halted on the eve of a great feast. Communities, immortalizing their gratitude, inscribed murals in sacred spaces depicting Michael trampling famine and disease underfoot, a testament to his power to deliver lives en masse when human remedies proved impotent. In the intricacy of Michael's deliverance there lay an elemental truth. He never forced the hand of free will. Souls were guided towards safety, not wrested from choice. When a young poet contemplated the eternal question of suffering, he found insight in an inexplicable stanza rising within him, a verse that spoke of darkness as the canvas upon which divine light may be painted. Through his words, thousands found solace in their own trials. Their perception shifted from despair to a quiet acceptance that every trial could become a vessel for grace. Michael's deliverance had not stripped away the struggle, but had infused it with meaning, revealing the hidden pathways to redemption. Even as the world reached its final tumultuous hours, ancient texts foretold that Michael's role as deliverer would shine brightest. When the abyss threatened to swallow all foundations of society, the Archangel would stand at the gates, his wings spanning the horizon, offering passage to those cloaked in righteousness. In that moment, salvation would come not only from divine decree, but from a lifetime of ordinary moments carried toward the light. The small kindnesses, the whispered prayers, the acts of courage rarely sung of in grand epics. Michael's deliverance promised that every life touched by the gentle stirrings of compassion would find safe harbour when chaos reigned most fiercely. And so, throughout eternity's winding corridors, Michael continued his vigil. With the patience born of 1,000 ages, he waited in the silent spaces between heartbeats, listening for the faintest cry for help. To the righteous, his arrival was as natural as a breath of wind on a calm sea, an unseen hand lifting burdens with perfect timing. To the redeemed, he became the emblem of hope, proof that no darkness could extinguish the spark of grace that flickered in even the smallest of souls. In every whispered prayer, in every act of love, in every gesture of mercy, Michael's deliverance lived on, an eternal promise that the Archangel would stand between the righteous and ruin, unwavering as the dawn. The sword of Michael, divine weapon and symbol. A hush would descend across the heavens before Michael drew his sword, for this was no ordinary blade fashioned by mortal hands. Heathed at his side in times of peace, it shone dimly as if tempering its own brilliance until the moment demanded its light. Forged in the first fires of creation, and quenched in waters drawn from the deep wellspring of divine mercy, Michael's sword held within its steel a living essence of God's power, not raw force, but the pure, unassailable expression of justice itself. In those earliest days when the celestial realm moved in perfect harmony, the sword waited. Its hilt bore inscriptions in an ancient tongue, letters that shifted and glowed with hidden meaning whenever the Archangel walked among the stars. The blade carried no weight for Michael, who needed neither strength of arm nor calloused hand. Instead, it responded to his will as water responds to wind, flowing without resistance. When he raised it to the light of eternity, the sword caught 10,000 hues all at once, each colour a facet of the divine nature it embodied: blue for righteous judgment, gold for unbroken truth, crimson for the fierce love that destroys only to protect. Legends tell of the sword's first unveiling on the day Michael confronted the spirit of rebellion in the heart of heaven. As Lucifer's pride blazed like a second sun, it took that flaming blade to cut through the veil of deception and reveal the true nature of the fallen one. Each stroke did not spill blood, for spirits bear no flesh, but severed the tendrils of corruption, dispersing them like smoke before dawn's first breeze. The very echo of the sword's arcs rang through the cosmic halls, as though reality itself acknowledged the authority behind its swings. Though it cut without wounding life, the sword purified, and purification there demanded resolute action. When Michael faced legions of infernal offspring spawned from the forbidden unions of angels and mortals, the blade did more than smite. Its flame purified the stain upon creation, restoring broken boundaries with sizzling clarity. In that crucible of light and shadow, the Archangel demonstrated that his weapon was an instrument of healing, not vengeance, a means to restore order rather than to revel in destruction. Through the ages, Michael's sword appeared time and again in human visions. A desert hermit would glimpse its flame while denying himself all comfort. awakening to find his tattered cloak repaired and his spirit steadied against the illusions of worldly joy. A battlefield medic straining beneath the cries of wounded soldiers reported a luminous shape lowering overhead, the sword's blade casting a calm glow across the carnage before vanishing as silently as it had come. By morning, the worst of the wounded had rallied, as if the warmth of the sword's light had healed more than flesh. Artisans in every land have attempted to capture the sword's image, yet no two depictions agree. In some, it gleams with the brilliance of molten silver. In others, it appears as a column of living flame, its edges shifting with every heartbeat of the cosmos. A few sacred texts describe the blade as so fine it could pass through the barriers between dimensions, slicing the unseen threads that held chaos at bay. When Michael sought to seal breaches in reality, that spectral edge cut cleanly, stitching rifts closed with an artistry that mortal minds could scarcely fathom. Beyond its physical form, the sword carried a voice, a silent resonance that spoke directly to the heart of all who stood for truth. Those willing to raise the sword alongside Michael felt a deep certainty bloom within their souls, a conviction born of the blade's purity rather than any human rationale. In churches consecrated to the Archangel, the faithful would touch carved representations of the sword before significant decisions, believing its divine essence granted them wisdom to discern right from wrong in moments of moral uncertainty. Though the sword heralded decisive action, Michael's use of it was always measured. When Lucifer arose again in whispers of subtle deceit rather than open rebellion, the Archangel chose not to raise his blade but to stand guard, the weapon still at his side. In the quiet of those tense hours, the sword's mere presence sufficed to hold back tide after tide of corrupt ambition. In countless human lives, small choices teetered on the brink of darkness, and it was that silent gleam, as much a promise as a threat, that turned hearts back toward the light. In some mystical traditions, the sword bore secret names of God along its fuller carved letter, by letter, in patterns only revealed when the blade glowed at its brightest. Reciting those names in prayer was said to call forth Michael's protection in heightened measure, surrounding supplicants with a circle of holy fire that no evil could penetrate. Temples of old contained fragments of metallic relics believed to have been touched by the sword itself. Pilgrims travelled great distances to kiss their edges, trusting that even the faintest echo of its power could communicate grace to weary souls. As centuries unfurled, the sword's symbolism seeped into human institutions of justice. Courts of law across diverse cultures fashioned their swords of office or ceremonial maces in homage to Michael's blade, hoping to reflect its impartiality and clarity. Judges carried these symbols into their chambers as reminders that true justice, like Michael's sword, must serve the vulnerable rather than the powerful, and must cleanse wrongdoing without staining the innocent. In the whispers of esoteric orders, Michael's sword became the emblem of inner purification. Initiates were taught to visualize its living flame cutting through illusions of self-deception, severing attachments to pride, greed, and fear. Such meditations were said to align the practitioner's will with divine will, sharpening the inner, spiritual sword of discernment that allowed them to navigate life's shadows without succumbing to them. In that sense, the Archangel's weapon became both literal and metaphorical. The outer blade wielded in cosmic battles, and the inner edge of clarity that made righteousness tangible in human hearts. Even as the final days approached, tradition held that Michael's sword would lead the vanguard, its light beckoning faithful souls through the chaos of apocalypse. When the dragon was cast down and the heavens trembled one last time, it was that blade that would carve the new heavens, not with violence, but by severing the last remnants of rebellion, allowing all that remained to stand under the unblemished light of divine purpose. And so, throughout the vast span of eternity, before creation's dawn, in the hush between cosmic storms, and beyond the final renewal, Michael's sword remained at the ready. Its flame neither dimming nor consuming, it stood as the perfect symbol of divine justice. Fierce yet merciful, decisive yet restorative. In every flicker of its light lay the promise that truth, when wielded with love, need never fear the darkness. Scales and armour, emblems of divine balance. A soft radiance surrounded Michael as he stood immovable before the chaos of creation's edges, his armour gleaming like polished starlight. Each plate of his breastplate was etched with ancient runes that glowed faintly whenever injustice stirred in the hearts of mortals below. This armour was no mere protection against physical assault. It served as a living testament to the resilience of order itself. Forged by celestial smiths in the heart of a collapsing star at the world's dawn, the metal had soaked up the first cries of creation, both triumphant and sorrowful. When Michael donned that armour, he carried the memory of every act of courage ever offered in defence of the weak, every moment of steadfastness amidst despair. On his left arm he bore a shield embossed with the question that pulsed at the core of his being. Quis ut Deus? Who is like God? A declaration etched in flaming silver letters. Though the phrase itself was a question, its tone resonated as a statement of unwavering purpose. Whenever dark ambitions rose among angels or mortals, the shield's surface would flare, its rim alight with protective fire that repelled deceitful words as easily as stones. In human legends, this gleaming banner of truth appeared to knights on storm-racked battlefields and to monks besieged by hallucinations in desert solitude, reminding them that no force, however seductive, could rival divine wisdom. Yet it was the scales Michael carried in his offhand that captured the imagination of humankind most deeply. Crafted from the same star-forged metal as his armour, the scales bore two polished bowls suspended on delicate chains. They balanced souls rather than weights, keeping their contents in perfect equipoise. Those who gazed upon the Archangel's scales in visions spoke of seeing every secret deed measured, a kind word left unspoken, a mercy withheld, a moment of courage that would never find its storyteller. The scales recorded intentions as meticulously as actions, urging mortals to remember that true virtue dwells in the spaces between gesture and outcome. Legends describe the first use of those scales at the conclusion of the Great Flood, when Michael descended to bathe the earth in light once more. Beneath him, the surviving creatures and the remnant of humanity gathered, trembling at the promise of judgment. Michael did not raise his sword or unsheath his spear. Instead, he lifted the scales high above the waters and whispered words older than the world. In that moment, the bowls glowed with an inner fire, and each soul, from the humblest shepherd to the mightiest king, found its record laid bare. Yet those who trembled discovered to their wonder that mercy outweighed all burdens, for every plea for forgiveness had tipped the scales toward redemption. Through centuries of human storytelling, Michael's armour and scales became intertwined symbols of protection and judgment. Medieval cathedrals carved his likeness high on their portals, sable-iron figures with raised swords, breastplates trailing inscriptions in Latin, scales swaying gently as though stirred by invisible winds. Pilgrims traced those carvings with reverent fingers, seeking a measure of the Archangel's grace before stepping into sanctuaries filled with candle smoke and whispered prayers. For many, the very sight of Michael's form along the nave walls quelled fear, promising that the balance between good and evil remained firmly in divine hands. In mystical writings, the armour itself spoke. Visionaries in cloistered cells recounted waking to the echo of a metal plate shifting across marble floors, only to glimpse Michael gliding past stained glass windows long after midnight. The reflections of his helm's crest, cast in moonlight, danced like living creatures upon their chambers. Some took this as a sign that the Archangel tested the resilience of their vows, that his presence affirmed their commitment to the path of light. The armour did not rest on his shoulders as a burden, but as an extension of his will, a perfect harmony of purpose and form. Over time, the scales found their way into ceremonies of earthly justice. Kings and magistrates would hold court beneath tapestries depicting Michael's unwavering form. Before passing sentence, they raised a small pair of gilded scales in tribute, recalling that every law must reflect divine balance. Within those bowls, they placed tokens, coins, seeds, grains, to symbolize both worldly responsibility and eternal truth. Even when rulers grew corrupt, they hesitated beneath Michael's gaze, for the Archangel's image served as a mirror to their souls. Many believed that injustice perpetrated in his name would haunt them beyond the grave, for no human cloak could conceal a heart weighed down by unrighted wrongs. In the art of spiritual practice, Michael's symbols found new life. Monastics performed rituals invoking his armour's invincibility and the precision of his scales. Chanting ancient hymns, they visualized themselves clad in plates of light, each link of chainmail singing with the hope of deliverance. In meditation, they imagined scalar bowls within their own souls, gently balancing every desire against a just measure. These practices taught that judgment need not be harsh. It could be as patient and discerning as the Archangel himself, separating true guilt from the fiction of self-condemnation. In that inner chamber of the mind, armor and scales guided those who sought to become as diligent in self-examination as Michael in cosmic duty. Even in times of war, soldiers carried talismans of Michael's armor into battle. Leather pouches held tiny replicas of his breastplate studs. Iron medallions bore the silhouette of his scales. When arrows rained and shields splintered, warriors whispered his name, feeling a surge of fortitude cross their bones. Accounts survive of horsemen cut down amidst flashes of steel who, awakening from near death, claimed to see Michael standing sentinel over fields of smouldering bodies. They felt warmth in the presence of his scales, as if each man's faith in justice weighed upon them, tipping the balance toward life even as death gathered at their heels. Throughout the Renaissance, artists reimagined Michael's armor in the era's own martial vogue. Richly gilded loricas, feathered pauldrons, intricately tooled gauntlets. Yet they never forgot to include the subtle curves of his scales, sometimes hinged on their shield's reverse side, as though he needed both offense and judgment at once. Their canvases captured fleeting moments, the Archangel's upward gaze as a single tear fell into one bowl, symbolizing mercy. The resolute curve of his pauldron as he turned to face a new threat, representing unwavering defense. Collectors and patrons marveled at these works, finding in them not simply holy imagery, but a mirror of humanity's own struggle to balance compassion and resolve. In the final tales of earthly prophecy, Michael's scales and armor mark the threshold of apocalypse. When the sky cracks and the last trumpet echoes across all lands, the Archangel will stand once more, his armor blazing with primordial light, his scales extended to receive every mortal fate. But even then, his posture will speak not of victory sought for pride's sake, but of solemn responsibility. For he must weigh 1 trillion souls with infinite care, even as his armor guards him against the tumult unleashed by final judgment. Those who believe that sight, even in the world's last hour, will see in Michael not a distant warlord, but the guardian of divine balance, whose truest power lies in preserving justice without forsaking mercy. And so, as sleep gently descends upon the weary world and dreams stir behind closed lids, one may imagine Michael's figure poised between realms, the steady gleam of his armor, like moonlight across a silent lake, the soft sway of his scales, balanced against the quiet hush of night. In that stillness lies assurance that beyond every storm of injustice, there stands a warrior whose might serves not tyranny, but the sacred harmony between right and compassion, and who holds firm the scales that weigh every heart. Allies among the stars, Michael and fellow archangels. All around Michael's luminous form spread the vast expanse of heaven's council chambers, where 7 mighty beings stood arrayed in orderly ranks. Gabriel, radiant bearer of divine messages, hovered at Michael's right, his wings aflame with the soft glow of dawn. Raphael, whose name meant God heals, occupied the left flank, his presence suffusing the air with a gentle warmth that calmed even the most troubled thoughts. Uriel stood just behind, his eyes like liquid amber reflecting hidden currents of destiny only he could discern. Beyond these 4, 3 archangels less often named but no less great. Jophiel, whose wisdom shone as soft lantern light. Zadkiel, whose mercy poured forth like a river. And Remiel, keeper of sacred visions, formed a perfect circle around heaven's throne, each contributing a unique facet to the unity of purpose. Unlike mortal armies bound by fear or ambition, these archangels served a shared divine will, their unity a living testament to cooperation among equals. Each brought a different gift: Gabriel's unerring speed in delivering urgent tidings, Raphael's power to mend wounds both physical and spiritual, Uriel's keen insight into the unfolding tapestry of history, Jophiel's ability to kindle inspired thought, Zadkiel's capacity to temper judgment with compassion, and Remiel's talent for weaving visions that guided faithful hearts. Michael, foremost of these, served both as strategist and sentinel, ensuring that every movement, whether a healing current or a clarifying word, remained in perfect harmony with the divine plan. When turmoil rippled across the mortal sphere, the Archangelic Council convened under Michael's guidance. No trumpet blast heralded these gatherings. Rather, a soft chord of vibrations felt rather than heard suffused every chamber, Clouds of iridescent mist coalesced into a translucent table at the council's centre, upon which glowing runes shifted to depict mortals in peril. Cities besieged by drought, armies teetering on the brink of despair, solitary souls trembling with hopeless longing. Michael stretched forth his hand, and the 7 archangels formed a circle of light, their auras interlocking like the gears of a cosmic clock. In that silent communion, they shared the weight of countless prayers ascending from every corner of creation. Their discussion needed no words, for the archangels communed by thought and feeling. Yet when a directive required utterance, Gabriel's voice took shape like molten silver, gentle yet unbreakable. "The children of men waver," he intoned, his gaze reflecting Michael's unwavering resolve. "They stand upon the verge of sorrow." Across the circle, Raphael's wings brushed together, stirring currents of healing energy. "Aye, then let us weave threads of comfort into their nights," he replied, voice mellifluous as a sacred hymn. "Let compassion guide their awakening until light returns to their hearts." Uriel's brow furrowed, his aura flickering with the colours of sunset as he offered necessary caution. "Beware hidden dangers. False hope clothed in gentleness may lead them astray." At this, Michael inclined his head, acknowledging both mercy and wisdom as indispensable allies in the defence of creation. Coordinating their tasks, Michael dispatched his allies with celestial precision. Gabriel was sent to distant lands to bear urgent tidings, to ignite faith in hopeless hearts, to deliver warnings when balance teetered dangerously. He slipped through dreams like a cool breeze, his arrival marked by sudden clarity where confusion had reigned. Trails of faint golden sparks flitted through slumbering minds, and in the morning, mortals awoke with purpose renewed. Raphael journeyed along ley lines of healing energy, mending scorched earth and scarred souls alike. His footsteps left small springs at forgotten crossroads, and the afflicted found solace even in remote villages. Uriel revealed hidden knowledge to those prepared to receive it. Prophets, seers, mystics whose minds could grasp profound mysteries without being consumed. Jophiel guided scribes and artists, inspiring illuminated manuscripts and musical hymns that carried heaven's light into mortal worship. Zadkiel appeared in the courts of compassionate judges, urging mercy and context into sentences often blind to hardship's nuances. Ramiel, meanwhile, threaded visions into the dreams of poets and leaders alike, ensuring that hope blossomed even amid trials. Their combined influence formed an unseen lattice of protection, encouragement, and guidance across the breadth of human affairs, each archangel stepping through the veil of worlds to reinforce Michael's grand strategy. When darker forces crept too close to Earth, Michael summoned the full assembly. Within the hallowed chambers, towering pillars of living light thrummed in resonance. A great map unrolled itself across the translucent table, delineating nodes of corruption like festering wounds in the fabric of reality. Michael drew his sword and set its blade aflame with the first breath of creation. The archangels responded. Gabriel's trumpet blazed like a comet's tail. Raphael's staff glimmered with living water. Uriel's flame crackled with searing insight. Jophiel's lantern cast paths of revelation. Zadkiel's chain of mercy snared despair, and Ramiel's veil of visions shrouded dark intent. Together they wove a ring of power so complete that no malign force could breach it. In those dire moments, they did not merely repel evil, they provided a living example of celestial unity. Mortals glimpsing that synergy, whether in transient visions or mystic ecstasies, felt a newfound certainty that heaven's might did not operate in isolation, but through harmonious purpose. Through Michael's leadership, the Council's work transcended mere combat. It became an ongoing tapestry of defense and nurture, war and peace interwoven in a single design. Even after conflict's tide receded, Michael's council remained vigilant. Threats never slumbered indefinitely, and the balance of free will across countless realms demanded constant care. The archangels monitored shifting patterns of thought and emotion in distant worlds, ready to step in should imbalance threaten to cascade into disaster. Their unity under Michael's command served as a reminder that divine power finds its highest expression, not in solitary heroism, but in purposeful collaboration, each archangel lending a distinct note to the grand symphony of heaven's guardianship. Long after mortal chronicles turned to dust, hymns composed in remote monasteries and sung beneath starlit skies recalled these moments. They spoke of Michael standing at the heart of heaven's council, his wings outstretched as conduits of both command and compassion, weaving the deeds of angels into a seamless pattern that upheld all life. Even as centuries passed and epochs faded from memory, the enduring image remained. Michael, first among his peers, uniting might and mercy, war and peace, in service of a design too vast for any single being to sustain alone. The flaming sword, Michael's divine weapon. Michael's sword was unlike any blade forged by human hands. It shimmered with inner fire, a living flame that seemed to pulse in time with the heartbeat of creation itself. In the silent halls of heaven, where even the faintest sound might ripple outward in concentric waves of light, the sword's presence spoke of purpose beyond destruction. It was born at the dawn of time, wrought from the very essence of divine will, and set aflame by the breath of the Creator. Where lesser swords cut flesh and steel, Michael's blade cut through corruption, severing lies from truth, pride from humility, chaos from harmony. Legends told that the sword's hilt was carved from a single shard of primordial light, cooled into a form that fit Michael's hand with perfect intimacy. The crossguard arched like a pair of wings folded in repose, each quillon tipped with a tiny brilliant star that never dimmed. Its pommel bore the inscription, "Who is like God?" Not a question, but a declaration of wonder, a mirror held up to all who faced its gleam. The blade itself was slender yet unbreakably strong, its edges wreathed in flickering gold and silver flames that never consumed the metal beneath, but danced over its surface in endless undulation. When Michael summoned the sword, he did not roar or storm into battle. Instead, he would stand silently at the threshold between light and shadow, lifting the blade before him until its radiance bathed everything in a glow so pure that darkness recoiled from its edges. In that moment, every rebel angel of old would have felt the weight of their choices, their corrupt hearts laid bare beneath the sword's unerring light. Mortal visions of this scene described storms calming at the sword's approach, waves halting in mid-break, and entire armies pausing in awe as the radiance swept across the field. Michael's sword did not destroy indiscriminately. It severed that which must fall away to allow life to flourish. In early chronicles, when the Watchers had corrupted the earth by teaching forbidden knowledge and spawning the Nephilim, it was Michael who descended to bind the fallen angels. His sword touched each rebel's wings in turn, the flame purging their celestial grace until only twisted remnants remained. Though human eyes saw only smoke and emerald light, the true work was one of cleansing. The blade seared away the stain of disobedience, leaving the essence of justice unsullied. Across scripture, hints of this flaming blade surfaced again. In Genesis, fiery swords were stationed at the gates of Eden, barring wayward humans from re-entering paradise. While the guardian there was unnamed, many believed it to be Michael or his envoy, wielding a fragment of that same celestial weapon. The symbolism held deep resonance. Adam and Eve's exile was not merely punishment, but a protective measure, keeping the sacred flame reserved for those who would steward rather than exploit creation. In the apocalyptic visions of Revelation, Michael's sword gleamed once more as he led heaven's armies against the great dragon. The conflict erupted not with the clash of iron, but with waves of blazing truth. Each stroke of Michael's blade dissolved the dragon's illusions, unraveling dark deceptions spun over millennia. When the dragon recoiled, it did not flee wounded. It shrank before the purity of Michael's conviction. Mortal readers glimpsed a single line. His sword drew the captive seal from the dragon's throat, and with that word of righteousness the dragon's power was ended. In that moment, hope was rekindled for every soul besieged by fear. Artists throughout the ages struggled to capture the sword's living flame. Early mosaics depicted Michael with a halo of concentric tongues of fire, the blade itself portrayed in tesserae of molten gold that seemed to flicker when candlelight danced upon the walls. Renaissance painters added intricate runes along the fuller, arcane symbols said to be the secret names of God, granting the blade its power to cut through spiritual darkness. Baroque sculptors favoured dynamic poses. Michael poised with arched back and raised sword, drapery swirling, capturing the instant before the world was remade by a single stroke. But beyond these grand tableaux lay quieter stories of the sword's gentle use. In humble villages beset by plague or famine, priests recited ancient prayers invoking Michael's name, holding a small silver replica of the blade over water to consecrate it. Travellers carried tiny talismans shaped like miniature swords, not to harm but to shield against evil spirits and misfortune. Those who slept with such charms under their pillows often awoke with a renewed sense that the world's shadows were held at bay by something greater than human fear. Yet the sword's power was not automatic. Michael's own restraint served as a testament to its purpose. He never drew the blade for vengeance or demonstration of force. Even in the midst of cosmic wars, he paused, weighing the necessity of each action. Legends recounted that when Satan and his host contested the body of Moses, Michael confronted the accuser bearing none but the unspoken might of his blade, and still chose humility, uttering only, "The Lord rebuke you." The sword stayed sheathed, its authority speaking loud enough without fire. The sword's flame also held a purifying quality. Monastic traditions compared it to a blaze that sears away the rust of sin, leaving the soul polished like sacred metal. In medieval mystic writings, penitents described visions of Michael's sword passing above their heads in silent blessing, the flame warming their hearts and inspiring genuine contrition. This was no fire of punishment but a cleansing flame, ready to burn away the dross and refine what remained into something worthy of heaven's light. In esoteric teachings, the sword symbolized discernment. Just as steel's edge divides materials according to cleaved grain, Michael's sword pierced illusions to reveal underlying truths. The sword's path was said to trace the line between reality and falsehood, guiding the righteous in moments of confusion. Mystics who meditated on the sword's image found clarity of mind, sudden insights that cut through tangled doubts like a blade through silk. When night falls and mortal souls navigate the realm of dreams, some describe flashes of a white-hot light, a whisper of metal against fabric, and a presence that calms nightmares with unspoken promise. In those moments, Michael's flaming sword offers silent guardianship. No shout, no clang of steel, but a gentle assurance that the boundary between safety and threat remains under watchful protection. Even as dreams twist and shadows form, the sword's flame stands eternal, a beacon to guide lost spirits back to serenity. In the final chapters of history yet to unfold, prophecy holds that the sword will blaze forth again. When creation's balance trembles on the brink, Michael will stand at the cosmos's heart, sword raised, not to slay, but to seal away final corruption. That act will not be triumphalist but restorative. With one stroke, the sword will mend the tear in reality's fabric, weaving broken threads back into the tapestry of divine harmony. Through every age, Michael's flaming sword endures as symbol and substance, an echo of the Creator's first word, "Let there be light." It reminds all beings that true power lies not in subjugation, but in the willing defense of truth. Whenever darkness threatens to overrun hope, that living flame awaits on the horizon, shining with clarity, resolve, and the promise that light will always withstand shadow. The scales and armour, Michael's symbols of justice and protection. In the vast tapestry of celestial imagery, two symbols stand out as emblematic of Michael's purpose and presence: the shimmering scales and the gleaming armour. They speak of balance and defence, of cosmic order upheld and the innocent safeguarded. These icons, woven through centuries of art and devotion, tell a story as ancient as the first light, echoing the Archangel's unerring commitment to fairness and protection. The scales Michael bears are not mere instruments of judgment, but reflections of divine equilibrium. In the quiet chambers of heaven, where every ripple of light carries meaning, the scales hang suspended, their balance unwavering. Each pan, crafted from purest silver, is etched with the signs of human endeavour. Small figures representing acts of mercy, threads symbolising mercy's interweaving with justice. When Michael conducts the weighing, he does so not with stern detachment, but with profound compassion. The scales register not only actions, but intentions, subtle movements shifting the balance as hidden acts of kindness. A whispered comfort, a hand offered to the fallen, tip the beam toward grace. Scriptures offer tantalizing glimpses of these scales. In apocryphal visions, Michael is described stepping forward when a soul reaches life's end, placing it gently into one pan while laying the record of their deeds in the other. As observers watch in hushed awe, the scales settle with a soft clang, announcing the just verdict. Yet the emphasis lies not on punishment, but on recognition, each life acknowledged in its fullness. Medieval mystics wrote of seeing the scales' pans catch and refract heavenly light, their surfaces dancing with colour as living remembrance of every fleeting act of virtue. Below the scales, Michael's armour gleams with quiet authority. Unlike human armour, hammered from earthly steel, his is forged in celestial fire and tempered by divine purpose. The breastplate, carved in perfect symmetry, bears no ornate reliefs. Instead, it radiates a smooth brilliance that suggests purity of intent. No mark of pride mars its surface. Across his shoulders rests a mantle of starlight, each fold alive with the soft glow of distant suns. The helm atop his brow carries no visor, for Michael's sight pierces all veils of illusion. The open face speaks of transparency and truth, inviting souls to stand before him without fear of hidden judgment. Chains of light secure pauldrons to the pauldrons, each link a promise that the burden of protection will never slip. Greaves and gauntlets follow the same design, functional yet suffused with sublime artistry. When Michael moves, the armour seems to flow like liquid radiance around his form, responding to his will without impediment. Mortal tales describe the sound of his footsteps as a low hum, like distant bells resonating across marble halls, an acoustic signature of his presence as guardian. Across civilizations, artists have sought to capture these symbols in mediums both humble and grand. Byzantine mosaics in sacred basilicas depict Michael with scales in one hand and a sword in the other, sword lowered, emphasizing the primacy of mercy. The tesserae shimmer in the candlelight, giving life to the scales as they appear to tilt ever so slightly toward compassion. In Romanesque reliefs carved into cathedral portals, Michael stands sentinel, his armour rendered in crisp lines and deep shadows. Pilgrims passing beneath these stone guardians would pause, tracing the worn grooves of the scales and finding reassurance that their own lives too were held in balance by heavenly care. Renaissance painters introduced new nuances, draping Michael's armour with fabrics painted so lifelike they seemed to billow beyond the canvas. They rendered the scales with classical precision, each link of the chain and every rivet in the breastplate painstakingly detailed. One notable fresco shows Michael lifting his scales over a battlefield strewn with broken weapons and fallen standards. As the scales settle, the tiny figures in each pan glow, recalling individual acts of mercy amid the chaos. Soldiers sharing water, medics tending wounds, enemies sparing each other's lives. The message resonates clearly. Justice must account for both the grand sweep of history and the small choices that define our humanity. In medieval Spain, on the walls of a secluded monastery, an obscure abbot painted Michael standing atop a sealed door. On one side lay the Book of Life, its pages open to unknown names. On the other, a dark scroll of accusations. As Michael's scales found equilibrium, the abbot inscribed a prayer beneath, "Let mercy tip the scales that weigh the soul." Pilgrims recorded feeling an inexplicable calm as they passed that threshold, a momentary sense that their own stories were recognized in heaven's ledger. Far less known but equally potent are the traditions surrounding Michael's armour. In the remote highlands of Ireland, shepherds once reported seeing a radiant figure stride across mist-shrouded hills at dawn. He paused beside ruined cairns, his helmet reflecting the first rays of sun, before vanishing. Locals believed he was coating their fields in protective light, a spectral ward against wolves and night raiders. Though no physical armour remained, the story endured as testament to Michael's vigilance, even in the world of mortal danger. Pilgrims to Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy tell of a small chapel carved into the rock where a weathered plaque bears Michael's image. The Archangel, feet planted firmly on a vanquished serpent, shield raised high and scales gleaming. Under the harsh salt breezes, the relief's contours have softened over time, yet visitors still pause in reverence, eyes drawn to the scale's central beam, a symbol that divine justice withstands even the ravages of wind and tide. Beyond these physical depictions, Michael's symbols thrive in everyday devotional objects. In Sicily, older families pass down heirlooms, bracelets of intertwined silver links, each link representing one of Michael's chainmail straps, clasped together in unbroken unity. A tiny charm shaped like a scale dangles at the centre, serving as constant reminder to weigh words and actions with both justice and kindness. Mothers teach children to touch the charm before sleep, whispering a prayer that their dreams be measured gently in the morning light. Clerics in medieval Europe often affixed small metal scale emblems to church doors on Michaelmas, the feast day marking his triumph. Parishioners would touch the emblem as they entered, silently seeking alignment with divine balance. In Eastern Orthodox ritual, incense censers sometimes bore motifs of scales entwined with olive branches, a fusion of judgment and peace that symbolized Michael's dual role as defender and reconciler. Even the language of jurisprudence bears the Archangel's imprint. Terms like just scales and armored defense echo through legal texts, reminding judges and advocates that law seeks both to protect the innocent and to redress wrongs. In the halls of early universities, students of canon law might wear badges depicting Michael's scales, guiding their studies toward principles of equity and compassion rather than rigid punishment. Yet these symbols gain their true power through the rituals and prayers enveloping them. An ancient rite of scales, preserved in a handful of monastic manuscripts, instructed officiants to light 12 candles around a pair of balance pans before pronouncing blessings on the congregation. Each flame corresponded to a virtue: truth, mercy, patience, ensuring that the communal life beneath Michael's gaze upheld the values his scales measured. Though rarely practiced today, the rite survives in fragments, a potent reminder of the depth to which Michael's symbols shaped human longing for divine order. Beyond formal worship, countless personal prayers invoke the Archangel's scales and armour. A father praying for his child's character might ask, "May Michael's scales guide my little one's steps, weighing each choice in mercy's light." A soldier departing for battle might clutch a small metal armour pendant, intoning, "Let Michael's breastplate enclose my heart, that I may defend without hatred." In these intimate petitions, the symbols become more than artistic motifs. They live as bridges between mortal need and heavenly promise. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of these symbols lies in their gentle invitation to self-reflection. To gaze upon Michael's scales is to consider the ways we balance our own lives, how we weigh duty against compassion, honesty against kindness. To imagine his armour is to recognise the protection we might offer others through courage tempered by humility. In the quiet descent of night, when worries whisper at the edges of consciousness, recalling these emblems can bring unexpected comfort, that our efforts at fairness and defence, however small, resonate in the larger harmony of creation. As the chapters of time unfurl, Michael's scales and armour stand as silent sentinels, tokens of justice that heals, of strength that uplifts. They remind all who contemplate them that the cosmos itself hinges upon balance, that true protection springs not from domination but from service. And when mortal hearts align their own actions to these symbols, they glimpse the Archangel's presence, a presence that need not be heralded with trumpets or drawn swords. It simply is, steadfast, luminous, guiding every soul toward the peace forged in the crucible of divine compassion, the final judgment and the restoration of all things. When the last trumpet sounds and the gathered hosts stand ready, Michael emerges once more, not as a battlefield commander, but as the herald of ultimate reconciliation. In that vast moment, neither bound by earthly time nor celestial seasons, he stands before the great throne, his wings folded in solemn dignity, preparing to guide creation through its most profound transformation. In early visions handed down through scripture and sacred law, John of Patmos describes seeing a great white throne and him who sat on it, from whose presence earth and sky fled away. It is here that Michael's role shifts from defender to divine minister, ushering in the transition from judgment to renewal. Behind the veil of thunder and light, every soul awaits its reckoning, yet beneath his steady gaze none tremble in desolation. For Michael's presence carries assurance that justice serves the purpose of restoration rather than retribution alone. Across apocalyptic texts, one recurring image holds particular weight: the gathering of the small and the great before the throne. Kings, peasants, scholars and children press forward in unbroken procession, drawn by an inner compulsion toward truth's final unveiling. At the threshold, Michael stands as both sentinel and host, his voice resonating like distant bells, issuing the call that stirs every breast. "Come forth," he seems to say, "that what was hidden may be revealed, that the tapestry of each life be seen in full light. The process of judgment unfolds not as a ledger of sins and virtues tallied in cold arithmetic, but as a living tapestry woven from choices made in the fragile material of human freedom. In one moment of stillness that stretches into eternity, Michael extends his scales, each pan illuminated by hues of dawn and dusk, to receive the soul. But here the scales do more than weigh. They transmute, absorbing every regret, every act of compassion, transforming them into new threads of life. The weight of wrongdoing does not crush. It becomes fuel for rebirth, as old patterns melt away before mercy's flame. In the book of Daniel, the prophet speaks of a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, after which your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. When that time arrives, Michael will again stand up as defender, yet this time his action completes the cycle of grace. He moves among the redeemed like a gardener among blossoms, trimming what is withered and nurturing every tender shoot of restored purpose. From the ashes of old failures rise seedlings of hope, and Michael, with his flaming sword sheathed, kneels to water each one. Some ancient manuscripts hint at the presence of other archangels during this final transformation, but none shine as clearly as Michael. Gabriel's voice reverberates once more with final proclamations. Raphael's healing touch soothes lingering wounds, and Uriel's light reveals hidden beauty. Yet Michael stands at the centre, the meeting point of justice and mercy. When the sea gives up its dead and mortality relinquishes its hold, it is Michael's hand that escorts the first spirits across the threshold into new creation. Among the visions of the restored world, one of the most enduring images describes a river clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. Tradition holds that Michael softly parts the gathered throng, guiding each soul to this living stream. As waters wash over weary feet, tempests of guilt wash away, and for the first time sincerity and selfhood stand unafraid. In some mystical texts, Michael is said to dip his own winged robe into the river, anointing the nations with healing, a sign that divine justice transforms into universal blessing. Yet the river's flow extends beyond healing. Along its banks grow trees of life whose leaves are for the healing of the nations. Michael walks among these trees, gathering fruit for every soul. Each morsel represents virtues once dormant: kindness where there was cruelty, courage where there was fear, wisdom where there was confusion. In that moment, what no human mind could conceive bursts into existence, the infinite reach of restored potential. In the final vision recorded by John, the holy city descends from heaven, its gates emblazoned with names of the 12 tribes and the 12 apostles, walls of jasper, streets of pure gold. Michael stands at each gate, welcoming the nations with gentle authority. He does not consign anyone to exile. There is no outer darkness to endure, for the old boundaries of exclusion dissolve before the dawn of unbroken communion. The celestial gates swing open, and Michael's voice invites every voice to join the endless hymn that resounds through the new creation. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Earth and sky, once torn by rebellion and sorrow, now merge into seamless harmony. Mountains, once witness to thunderous conflicts, bow into gentle hills. Seas, once rolling in fury, become glassy mirrors reflecting endless light. Michael, who measured cosmic balance with his scales, now watches as all creation finds its true rhythm. The flaming sword that carved boundaries and banished chaos transforms into an instrument of illumination, no longer cutting, but radiating light that reveals hidden wonders. In various strands of tradition, Michael's final role extends to the binding of Satan. Unlike the first expulsion, this binding is not a moment of triumph over an adversary, but a necessary act to release creation from the final tethers of fear. Satan, no longer the accuser nor rebel, is gently bound with chains woven from the shared remorse of every redeemed soul. In that act, Michael's sword does not slay but seals, preventing any last resurgence of shadow. The cosmic courtroom, once rife with accusation, falls silent, and the scales close in gentle rest. Beyond this binding lies Michael's ultimate gift, an unguarded peace. With the last barrier removed, every created being stands in perfect relation to every other, unfractured by fear or pride. Even the memory of conflict softens into a distant echo, a whispered lesson rather than a source of pain. Michael, the eternal guardian, steps aside so that harmony may flow freely. His final act of service becomes the gift of true freedom, the freedom to live in unity, to explore endlessly the depth of divine love. In the stillness that follows, Michael's presence lingers as a comforting warmth at the heart of all things. The cosmos breathes a silent hymn, each particle resonating with the triumph of restored justice. Though his grand tasks have concluded, he remains, the great archangel whose name asks, "Who is like God?" as living proof that nothing compares to the compassion and wisdom of the Creator. His vigil endures not in watchful conflict but in watchful love, a serene promise that the order he helped defend will never falter again. As mortal minds strain to grasp such visions, the thought of Michael's final roles offers a gentle reassurance that the universe bends toward redemption, that every tear shall be wiped away, and that the last act of judgment ushers in unending peace. In the hush before dawn, when worries hold fragile sway and sleep beckons with promises of repose, one might imagine Michael's scales once more, resting, luminous, at perfect balance, and feel the soft radiance of armour turn to light, a silent promise that creation stands secure in mercy's embrace. And so, as your thoughts drift towards slumber, remember Michael's final service, not mere victory over shadow, but the weaving of every broken strand into a tapestry of everlasting harmony. The archangel who began as heaven's defender now stands as creation's joyful host, his steadfast wings enfolding all in love's unbroken circle. In that abiding presence, night's uncertainties dissolve, and the promise of new morning shines, unending across eternity. Michael's enduring legacy and influence. Across time, from the moment his name first echoed through the halls of ancient prophecy to the present day, Michael has remained the keystone of spiritual imagination, the archangel whose story bridges the seen and unseen worlds. His legend has survived millennia of cultural change, theological debate, artistic reinvention, and societal upheaval, yet his essence, embodying courage, justice, and compassion, has never dimmed. In these final reflections, we trace how Michael's presence continues to shape our hopes, fears, and dreams, unfolding in texts and traditions, art and architecture, popular culture and private devotion. Long before the rise of formal religious institutions, communities whispered Michael's name as a talisman against danger. Shepherds crossing moonlit hills, hunters venturing into primeval woods, and travellers braving nascent trade routes all spoke his invocation with quiet faith. When storms threatened to engulf tiny villages, bell ringers dedicated to Michael told his name through driving rain and howling wind, believing that even thunder obeyed the decree of heaven's field commander. These humble beginnings reveal how Michael's protective role sprang from human need, the universal desire for guardianship amidst life's uncertainties. As organised religion developed, Michael's place in ritual and liturgy grew steadily. Early Jewish congregations prayed for Israel's deliverance under his watch, recalling how he contended with spiritual adversaries on their behalf. Christian worship incorporated the prayer to St. Michael, recited after every Mass for centuries, cementing his identity as defender of the faithful. In Islamic practice, Michael's association with sustenance and mercy complemented Jibril's role as messenger, illustrating the archangel's nurturing aspect alongside his warrior identity. Across these traditions, Michael's dual nature, fierce protector and gentle intercessor, offered a versatile symbol adaptable to diverse spiritual frameworks. Monastic orders and medieval knights further shaped Michael's emerging image. In cloistered corridors, monks transcribed illuminated manuscripts depicting Michael's heavenly battles, infusing their art with gold leaf and vivid pigment. Simultaneously, chivalric codes elevated him as the ideal warrior, his dedication to higher purpose a model for earthly knighthood. Knights donned his emblem on shields and tabards, offering fervent prayers to mirror his virtue on the battlefield. This confluence of contemplative devotion and martial valour forged a powerful archetype, the warrior whose martial prowess was tempered by unwavering humility and service. Pilgrims journeyed to sites where Michael had appeared, caves, mountaintops, coastal promontories, and instituted annual feasts commemorating his interventions. Each shrine reflected local geography, perched abbeys overlooking the sea, rocky chapels embedded in mountain slopes, and subterranean sanctuaries bathed in the cool glow of sacred springs. Pilgrimage routes converged on these shrines like lines of spiritual energy, drawing peasants, nobles, clergy and merchants alike into communal acts of devotion. Along the way, hymnals and miracle tales spread, weaving Michael's narrative into the fabric of everyday life. The Renaissance and Baroque periods witnessed an explosion of Michael imagery, fueled by renewed interest in classical heroic ideals and dramatic expression. From Titian's soaring canvases to Bernini's dynamic marble sculptures, artists explored the emotional depth of Michael's victory over darkness. His figure, muscular, graceful and impassive, stood as a testament to divine order triumphing over chaos. Paintings flared with chiaroscuro, capturing the moment Michael's sword struck the dragon, illuminating both terror and hope in bystanders' eyes. These masterpieces travelled Europe via royal patronage and ecclesiastical networks, solidifying a standardized iconography still recognizable today. The Protestant Reformation and ensuing secularization reshaped Michael's role in some regions. As iconoclastic fervor swept through northern Europe, many Michael shrines fell into disrepair, and his image faded from parish churches. Yet even in Protestant lands, Michael's narrative persisted in hymnody and folk tradition, recited in bedtime prayers and invoked in moralizing tales for children. The Archangel became a figure of moral instruction, embodying the virtues of courage and integrity. His story retold in simple verse as lessons in resisting temptation and standing firm in adversity. The Enlightenment's emphasis on reason and skepticism cast Michael into new alliances. Literature and philosophy. Poets like John Milton reimagined his struggle with Satan in epic verse, deepening Michael's portrayal as the principled commander who embraces sorrow and loss alongside victory. Philosophers drew allegorical insights from his story, interpreting the Archangel's obedience as an exemplar of harmonious order, countering Enlightenment critiques of authority and hierarchy. Even within rationalist circles, Michael's symbolic power endured, transformed into metaphors for personal conscience, societal order, and moral clarity. The 19th and early 20th centuries saw a revival of interest in angelology spurred by Romanticism and theosophical movements. Spiritualists and mystics spoke of Michael in trance seances, claiming to channel his voice as a guardian of higher wisdom. Occult orders incorporated his sigils into ceremonial magic, blending ancient names with ritual innovation. Though their methods departed from orthodox practice, these groups attest to Michael's magnetic appeal as a transcendent guide across the boundaries of conventional religion. Modernity introduced Michael to new arenas: literature, film, comics, and video games. He emerged as a sympathetic anti-hero, grappling with free will and moral ambiguity, his celestial mission complicated by empathy for humanity's struggles. In urban fantasies, Michael inhabits coffee shops and city streets, his otherworldly presence framed by the grit of contemporary life. Graphic novels depict him as a trench-coated detective battling demonic conspiracies, his muscle wrought from both divine might and human vulnerability. Video games allow players to wield his flaming sword, forging their own paths in cosmic conflicts. These reinterpretations keep Michael's story alive, adapting ancient symbolism to 21st century sensibilities. Beyond entertainment, Michael's name endures in rituals of personal and communal protection. Police officers, firefighters, and medical personnel wear his medal or invoke his blessing before entering danger's path. Parents whisper his invocation over sleeping children. Hikers murmur it when entering remote trails. Pilgrims still ascend steep paths to Michael's sanctuaries, drawn by the same hope that moved their ancestors. Even amid digital skepticism, the Archangel's aura of guardianship retains psychological power, offering comfort when reason yields to the mysteries of existence. In theological discourse, Michael remains central to debates about angelic nature, free will, and the interplay between divine sovereignty and creaturely agency. Scholars examine the evolution of Michael's portrayal from nameless heavenly warrior to articulated personhood, tracing how cultural contexts shaped each facet of his identity. Comparative religion studies highlight Michael's cross-faith resonance. A single figure interpreted through Jewish, Christian, and Islamic lenses, each tradition discerning unique nuances while acknowledging his shared significance. Michael's legacy also extends into ethics and public life. His unwavering commitment to justice tempered by compassion inspires contemporary movements for human rights and social reform. activists and spiritual leaders evoke his example when challenging oppressive systems, envisioning a world where power serves the vulnerable rather than exploiting them. On moral battlegrounds of our time, whether confronting corruption or advocating for the marginalized, Michael's archetype fuels both prophetic critique and protective solidarity. In the realm of personal spirituality, Michael invites practices of mindfulness and inner courage. Meditation on his figure encourages individuals to confront their inner dragons, fear, pride, injustice, wielding self-reflection as a sword of truth. Visualization techniques ask practitioners to imagine Michael's protective light, enveloping them in moments of anxiety or moral confusion. Whether approached as literal angel or powerful symbol, Michael's presence within the psyche offers a framework for cultivating resilience, integrity, and compassionate action. Today, as global challenges loom, from ecological crisis to geopolitical strife, the Archangel's story resonates anew. Michael's steadfast defense of divine order suggests that even in the face of overwhelming odds, persistent commitment to the common good can prevail. His narrative reframes adversity as an opportunity for courageous resolve and collective solidarity, reminding us that every generation inherits the mantle of heavenly guardianship. As this exploration of Michael's legacy draws to a close, we stand at the threshold of our own chapter in the Archangel's ongoing saga. He remains neither relic nor myth, but a living emblem woven into the tapestry of human hope. Whether we glimpse him in candlelit chapels, in the pages of sacred texts, or in the quiet chambers of our hearts, Michael continues to urge us toward the light, to stand firm against the dragons of division, and to wield justice as a tool of healing. And now, as sleep draws near like a gentle tide, let Michael's enduring presence soothe restless thoughts. Picture his wings enfolding worlds in protective sweep, his scales balanced between mercy and truth, his sword sheathed in loving purpose. In that vision, find rest and courage, knowing that the ancient guardian, who once led heaven's armies, still stands as a sentinel at the gates of our hearts, inviting peace and inspiring a dawn of renewed hope.